Okay, here you go. So again, we started with our fitness components, then we talked about the benefits of our physical activity. I think by now it should be clear. If there's still questions, please, stop me, yell, I'm stopping, okay? Then we talked about the skeleton system. You need to know what is the primary function of your skeleton. You need to know the bones of the name of the bones. You need to roughly know how a joint looks like. So it is possible that maybe a question will be, what is the structure of the joint? Is a tendon or is a ligament involved, or is maybe the cartilage, is that part of the bone, something like that, so that you know the names, okay, so that you know the structure of the joint. Then you don't necessarily need to know, all the, different joints all together, particular, like, when, for example, when you have a subtle thumb, the thumb is the only subtle joint in our body, actually. So that's the only joint which is a saddle joint. Yeah, so it's actually quite easy. It's actually quite easy to remember. Okay, so but I wouldn't worry too much. So hinge joint is actually quite obvious. So it's your knee and your elbow. Shoulder joint is ball and socket joint, which is shoulder and hip. And actually, there was never an exam question where they say, what is a pivot joint, or what is an example of a pivot joint? So don't worry about this. So you learned about the planes and why it's important. This is when it comes to programming and to avoid any muscle imbalance. And then we talked about the terminology. This one, we talked about the heart and the lungs. We talked about what is cardiac output, stroke volume. Jasmina, you had some questions about it yesterday. Is it clear now? What is the cardiac output? Is that clear? Jasmina?
Yeah.
Okay. It's clear, or was it not you? I thought one of them, they had issues.
No, I think it was Adam.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, it's okay. We will talk about this one again when we talk about cardiovascular condition. Okay. Then we talked about the blood pressure, and I will teach you how to take the blood pressure with a sphygmomanometer, with a stethoscope. That's why it's important that you are there for the practical. Okay. Next week we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We start about 10 o'clock. You need to be there to do your practical. Adam, I hope you will not mix up the dates anymore. Okay, so please, next week, Thursday. Okay, Thursday in the studio. I will share where our studio is. Okay, it's in Hatamas.
All right, no worries.
Just saying, Okay, so we talked about hypertension. Hypertension is if your heart rate is too high, blood pressure is too high. We talked about the energy system. Yeah, so what is the fuel for the exercise, or the energy system? So the anaerobic energy system and the aerobic system. We talked about the fuel. We talked about, okay, carbohydrates is the first one your body will use as energy. And then it will be using fat. So carbohydrate comes in forms either blood sugar, muscle glycogen, or liver glycogen. And once this one is depleted, your body is going to convert fat for energy, okay? And protein only in emergency situations. All right, then we talked about the training effect. Yeah, so this is basically an adaptation, what happens once you're getting used to the exercise, you're getting better and you're improving. That's the only thing. So if there would be an question, what is the training effect? I think it's because honestly, the questions are stupid, okay? And the answers are more stupid. So even if you don't learn and you just think a little bit logical, you can answer it. It's no problem, okay? Because the answers sometimes they are really, really stupid. So there's no way that, maybe 2 answers are completely rubbish and 2 answers might be okay. You might be in between these 2, and then you just think, okay, you remember, look back, and then you will know the answer. So don't worry about it. But we will do the mock test again together, okay? So we do that, don't worry. All right, so then we talked about the different muscles. So we have your heart muscle, we have the smooth muscle, and we have your skeleton muscle. We talked about the different terms. What is the origin, insertion, agonist, antagonist, synergist, and fixators? What is the difference? So please don't mix up synergist and stabilizer or fixators. Yeah, stabilizers are also helper muscle, but they don't help the let's say, with the muscle contraction itself. As the name says, they are only stabilizing on the origin of the moving muscle so that they can do their job. Okay, so they are working in the background. Okay, all right, and then we talked about okay, so yesterday we had a close-up look for the muscles. I think it's now a little bit more clear when you saw the movements and stuff like that. So we cover only the main muscles. Then we talked about the different muscle contractions. Yeah, it depends whether you do movement. It is called isotonic, and you have a shortening and a lengthening phase. When it shortens, it's concentric. When it lengthens, it is eccentric. When you have a static muscle contraction, remember when we do a plank, for example, or a standing wall squat, it is an isometric muscle contraction. And then we have the isokinetic muscle contraction, which is used for rehab. Yeah, you saw the little share, or when you do, let's say, aqua exercises, that is an isokinetic muscle contraction. So there is an application of force, and there's always a constant speed, and there's always a constant, the tension doesn't change. Okay. So then we talked about how this actually works. So we had a close look in our muscle cells. So I tried to explain how it works. So when the muscle contracts, the protein myosin and actin, they will collide over each other, and that is with help of the release of calcium. It will actually make a power stroke. That's the name, because it cross bridges, and then it will actually make this muscle contraction happen. Okay, but again, this is not for your exam. But for your exam, they will definitely ask you what is the difference between slow twitch muscle fiber and a fast twitch muscle fiber. And again, I showed you the difference. I asked you to think of, you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, you buy chicken breast, or you buy a drumstick. Yeah, so if you don't know what is the difference, which muscle fibers is which one, you think of, okay, the thigh is actually darker in meat because it has more myoglobin, because it's more used for aerobic, because the chicken is standing and waiting, so it's not really doing anything. Okay, so, and it needs air for it because it needs oxygenation. So, and oxygen is in the blood, and blood is red. Yeah, and that's why it is darker in meat. Yeah, and then the intermediate or fast twitch muscle fiber, they are lighter in meat because they have not so much hemoglobin or myoglobin, so they don't need oxygen. So that's why the fast twitch and the intermediate fast twitch muscle fibers, they are more for fast movements and like speed movement, explosive movement, power lifters using that. Yeah, and this is more for sprinters, and this is more for aerobic, kind of like marathon runners. Okay, but we have always a mix in our body, and we can actually change with exercise, you know, how we look like. That's why sometimes if someone is really bulky and suddenly they come and they are very lean, you can see the difference, and that is because you're changing your muscle fibers in your body. Okay, hypertrophy is only for fast twitch muscle fiber and intermediate fast twitch fiber. So the normal hypertrophy is not applicable to slow twitch muscle fiber. The hypertrophy a little bit, but not as much as this one. But we will talk today or tomorrow what is exactly hypertrophy, particularly when we're talking about hypertrophy programming, okay? Because that is usually what we do. When we start exercising, when we start weight training and programming for weight training, if somebody says, I want to be lean and kind of like tone up, that's hypertrophy, okay? So it's not necessarily only bodybuilders, okay? So the moment you start developing muscle, that's hypertrophy, okay? So then we talked about the connection, how our nerves and motor units work. I think this is so interesting. And we will go again in a little bit more details when we talk about next week for the practical, when we're talking about the flexibility, how we can apply this to our advantage when it comes, if you want to improve flexibility, okay? So we talked about the difference between the GTO, which is the muscle which senses the tension in our body. Remember, I talked about you with the, when you're carrying the heavy bags and suddenly you need to let go. Yeah. So this is basically how they're working together and they're signaling. Yeah. So the muscle spindles, they're always checking, is the length okay from the muscle? And the GTO is checking the tension of the muscle. And if the tension gets too much, the brain gets a signal, hey, do something. Okay. Otherwise I'm going to tear. Good. Okay. So then this is the one in your book. And then that one we looked, we had the videos, yeah, so we had a close-up look for this one. Okay, so now go to page number 34. And again, it will look a little bit different in the slides, but I always took out the things which is important for you to know. And if there is, again, something you need to know for your exam, I will let you know, okay? So let's go here, and I'm going to go, hang on, I just do the... I share different, hang on. I need to do this one. Okay. All right, everybody can see this? Okay. All right, so let's talk about levers and why it's so important. Okay. Okay, so now the mechanics of joint and muscle action. So we can move because levers make it possible for us. Okay, so it's the same as we have in it's actually physics. So it's actually repetitions what we did in physics. Yeah, so human movement is made possible through the use of levers. All the levers, they have a fulcrum, which is in our human body would be the joint. And you do have a rigid lever arm, which is the bone, and then you do have the force through your muscular contraction. And why this is important? This one is important in order for later when it comes to regression or progression of an exercise. How can you change the lever in order to make exercises harder or less hard? And also when it comes to injuries, okay? Because the joint stresses and lever strength and the force of gravity are considerations when it comes to muscle joint pain, yeah, and also when it comes to make an exercise harder or easier. Okay, so let's have a look first. So for example, when you do a long lever, yeah, let's say when we are doing where's my thingy here? Just take this out. So if you hear, if I don't hear you, so I put this down because it bothers me. So if you want something, you just wave me so that I can see you. But Adam, I don't see the camera. So if you have something, maybe you just have to write it in the group. Okay. So let's say if you're doing you want to work your shoulder, your anterior part of your deltoid. Okay. And when you do, let's say a front raise like this, that's a long lever. the force is here. This is your weight, okay? So when you do this is of course much more, this is harder because this one is longer than if you would do something like that. This is a short lever, and this is a long lever. Okay, so, and it's not only harder, but it is also more stress on your joints. Okay, so that is actually what it means. And when we talk later to injuries, you will see that all makes sense. So for example, here in your book, it is when you have, let's say, when you do a straight leg toe touch, you do have in your spine, you have little joints as well, okay? And that would be when you're doing a standing toe touch and you're bending forward, that would put more pressure on your, or a tensile force, that's the name of the pressure of the disc inside, okay? Then if you would do it, let's say, in a seated position and you're bending your legs and you shorten the lever in order to do that stretch, okay? So it's just an example that you do understand what I want to point out, okay? And then the force of gravity and the increase of stress of joint, I think that is exactly what I just said. Yeah, so when you do have a straight load, when you do a standing straight toe touch, your body will be your, let's say, your weight, and the gravity is down, so the floor is down. So when you go down, it puts a lot of pressure on your lower back. Okay, so sometimes it has nothing to do. Let's say if someone has a short hamstring when you can't touch your toes, sometimes it's just the problem in your disc. Okay, so but maybe it makes a little bit more sense when you later see the and also it makes a little bit more sense when we do the practical. That's why it's so important that you are there for the practical, because the moment you go to the machines and you try out different levers and you feel it on yourself and you can touch maybe somebody else and you feel the tension, it makes so much more sense. And you think back and yeah, of course it makes more sense. Okay, there you go. All right, so the type of levers, this one is, 5th grade or 6th grade school. Okay, so you may have learned. We have 1st class, 2nd class, and the 3rd class levers. Okay, so the 1st class lever is basically the fulcrum, means the joint is in the center. Okay, and then so at least it's basically in between the force and the load. Okay, so for example, when you have scissors, or when you have this, I don't know exactly, it's not a hammer. I'm not sure what is the English name for this one, but here it would be, yeah. So this one would be basically the fulcrum. Sorry, this one is the fulcrum. Then the effort is going down, and then you can lift this one up. So this one would be your 1st class lever. Okay. Then the 2nd class lever is your fulcrum is in the front. So the load, this is the load, lies between the fulcrum and the point of the force application. Yeah, when you do a standing calf raise, for example, that would be a 2nd class lever. Yeah, so when you do this, that is a 2nd class lever. So basically, this would be your fulcrum. This is your joint. Your body is the load. Yeah, the effort is going upwards. Okay, and then you do have the 3rd class lever, where the point of force application is between the load and the fulcrum. So basically, this one is your load, and this one is your joint. Remember, this one, the fulcrum is our joints. Yeah, and the effort would be the muscle contraction, so the effort goes up, and that one is a 3rd class lever. So I do have a video, you can just have a look, because I'm really bad in physics. I do understand it, but I'm very bad in explaining it, and I'm better in showing it kind of like in person. So that's why that's a little bit disadvantage when I try to explain this one in a Zoom call, but that's why I think a video is quite helpful. So let me know that you hear the sound as well.
Joints and levers
Sound?
of the human body.
Okay.
Objective: to understand how joints in the human body work as levers. A lever is a simple machine consisting of a rigid bar that rotates about a fulcrum and is
Yes.
used to transmit a force. There are 4 parts to a lever: lever arm, fulcrum, effort, and load. In the human body, bones act as lever arms, joints act as fulcrum, and muscles provide the effort and force to move loads. Based on the arrangements of joints and muscles, different classes of levers are identified in the body. First-class levers have the fulcrum in the middle, like a seesaw. An example is the joint between the skull and the atlas vertebrae of the spine. The spine is the fulcrum across which muscles lift the head. Second-class levers have load in the middle, like a load in a wheelbarrow. An example is the heel joint. Here, the upper body provides the resistance and the heel acts as the fulcrum. The effort is the contraction of the calf muscles. Third-class levers have the effort in the middle. An example is the elbow joint. When we lift a book, the elbow joint acts as a fulcrum across which the bicep muscle performs the work. Summary: joints and muscles in the human body function as levers. The joint between the skull and the first vertebrae is a first-class lever. The heel joint is a second-class lever. The elbow joint is a third-class lever.
So she explained it a bit different. And of course, this one, it depends on if it is British English or American English. They call it lever or they call it lever, but it's the same. Okay. All right. So now again, let's move on into your book to the advantage. And we're going now to compare some equipment considerations. Again, as mentioned before, we have we don't have the license to print those nice pictures out, but this is the extract from your book. Okay. So when you do have free weights or machines, they have advantages and disadvantages. Okay. And the advantages here, I take my laser point. So it works your synergist and also your stabilizer muscles. Okay. Because when you are, let's say, go for a seated, when you do, let's say, a seated leg extension, for example. Okay, so you're doing an isolation, you're doing a leg extension. Okay, so when you do on that's a bad example because that one is difficult to show as free weight. Okay, so let's say when we are doing a leg press, this one, yeah, so leg press machine. Okay, so what you do is you do have some synergists, involved, but because you will sit and you will actually you are stabilized already in your seat, you have you have the bench in the back, and you don't really need to use as many stabilizing muscles and synergists to push the platform away from you. In comparison, if you would do a free, let's say, a barbell squat. Yeah. So when you do a barbell squat, you have so much more stabilizers and synergists working, because if you don't switch on your stabilizers, for example, your core, and also your hip joint muscles, and also the little muscles surrounding your knee and your ankle, you would basically collapse and you would not be able to perform this exercise. Okay, that is what it means. It works your synergist and your stabilizer muscles. You do have a large exercise variation, whereas you don't have that really when you have a machine, unless you have a huge gym and you have really, you know, for every single exercise, what you can do with free weights, also a machine. You can do small weight adjustments. Usually machines, they have 5 kilos, and then the next one would be maybe 5 again. So 5 and 10 and then 15 kilos. So very often the weight jump in between is a lot. Some machines, they have an in-between weight and you can choose a little bit in between. But when you have a rack like that, very often it comes in maybe 1 kilo difference. Yeah, so you can start maybe with 2.5, and then you can do maybe 3.5, and then 5, and something like that. So this one is actually a good thing. Yeah, so that one is the small weight adjustment. You do have a larger range of motion, ROM. Yeah, so that's a range of motion, because when you have a machine, the range of motion is given by the machine. Okay, so if you could basically go a little bit more, let's say if someone has long legs and the seat position is fixed, and you know, you can adjust your seats in the machines. But sometimes if someone has very long limbs, and even though it's already on the biggest, let's say the largest, you know, number, what you can set him up, he may not be able to go full range of motion because it's already the end of the machine. So, you know, so maybe for me, that will never happen because I'm very short. But when I'm doing a leg press, for example, I can do full range of motion. That means I'm starting from here and I can go all the way up and forward and back. This one would be a full range of motion, okay? But if someone is very tall, and even if they sit, let's say maybe here would be the end of the exercise, because they can't go more because the machine is done, it's finished, you know, so there's no more. So that is what it means. So when you have free weights, you can actually do that according to your anatomical position and, you know, according how you're built, okay? So basically it's good for strength and general toning. It's the initial phase of power programs for athletes, intermediate and advanced clients. So normally beginners, if you do have the choice, it is easier for beginners to start them with machines rather than doing weight training with free weights, okay? Because obviously when you have someone who has never worked out before, and the machines gives you the range of motion and gives you the exercise, yeah, so it's easier for them to do that. But sometimes you don't have the choice, so you have to do free weights. But then obviously you need to start really, really careful, and you have to pay a lot of attention when it comes to the technique, how they do that. Otherwise, they will injure themselves. Disadvantage is easy to cheat. Okay, so when it comes to cheating, when we talk about powerlifting later, powerlifters sometimes using a technique which is called cheating. That is a proper technique. That is not, it's not a wrong technique. It looks like as they're cheating, but this is basically for them how they can overcome, let's say, the sticking point. Okay, the sticking point is, you do have, depends on where you are in your movement, you have a certain movement or a certain point in the movement where the exercise is harder. Okay, for example, I had it already yesterday when I do a bicep curl. So in the beginning of the exercise, it's harder, and the closer I get towards my upper body, the exercise gets easier. Okay, so, and if I go and increase the weight, because let's say I've trained a client for maybe 6 weeks with a certain weight, and it's time for them to progress, but maybe I don't have an in between. Maybe I only have, you know, 2.5 kilos, and the next heavier one would be 5 kilos. Okay, and even though with the 2.5 kilos they can, let's say, 20 reps, With the 5 kilos, it's quite difficult initially to do that. So what they need to do is basically they're using kind of like a cheating technique in order to overcome that first, that sticking point. That is the sticking point what we're talking about when I'm saying that little gap from, from easy to do the exercise, okay? But easy to cheat means you can also take momentum, okay? So when you see somebody is doing this, okay, then obviously then this one is not really effective, okay? Whereas you can't really do that when you have machines, yeah? Machines, they are connected usually with cables or they are guided. It depends on what machines you have. So that is the disadvantage, okay? Because your body finds the easiest path, okay? So when it is painful, your body will take the path which is easiest to perform the exercise. We are human, we don't want pain, yeah, okay? And then it can be very time consuming in setting up weights. Particular when you're using a long barbell and with the big plates. So when you do one set and then you need to, let's say, increase the weight for the second set, you need to open the screw, remove the lock, remove the plate, put the other plate in, okay? Unless you do have kind of like a big rack like that. But sometimes if it is a small gym, they only have, like small one, and then you can add on the weight. So with a screw, and usually big gyms, they have big racks like that. So you can actually do drop weights or, increase weights quite fast. But for example, if you go and exercise in someone's house or in a condo gym, often they don't have that. They have only, like the small silver bars, and they have plates which you can add on, yeah? And every time you need to change it, and that one can actually take up a bit time. And as mentioned before, the clients need to learn how to lift safely, okay? So that one is really, really difficult. Sometimes they need 6 months until 1 year until they can do a proper lift, okay? Safety issue, balance requirement, and it puts more stress on the joint and muscles, and they can actually collapse, okay? I mean, collapse means if they're not strong, if they don't really switch on all the stabilizer muscles because they don't know how to do it, they can actually kind of like they're doing a lift and then suddenly not collapsing in terms of losing consciousness, but collapsing in terms of because it's too heavy and they can't hold it anymore, okay? That is what it means. Okay, so advantages for the machines, they don't need to balance the weights. The set line of movement is given, okay? So if it goes this way, you can't go that way. But if you have a free weight, if you don't like to go that way, you can go this way, right? So, but that one can't happen when you have your machines. Some offer variable resistance, but not all. So it depends on the expensive, on the cost, how much the machines cost, okay? It's actually quite easy to use and also time efficient because you just need to, particularly when you have the pin, you need to remove the pin and change your weight. Or if you have an electronic device, you can just change the numbers and then you have a different resistance. So it's quite fast. It's safe to use. It doesn't need really a spotter. That means a spotter is someone who helps you to do the performance, but we talk about spotting and helping when we're doing the lifting techniques. And it's good for general condition, also for younger and elderly and for beginner, okay? Or later phase in rehabilitation. So if someone just had an injury and came from a physio, you may want to you want to start with machines rather than straight away go into free weights, okay? Yeah, and then you can do also some sport specific exercises. It depends on what machines you have. Again, it doesn't have always full range of motion. I just mentioned it. If someone has long legs and the machines is already on the biggest set, then you're done. So that's what it means. Okay. Many start in a pre-stretch position. Okay, so for example, that is the problem in a sticking point. I don't know whether you've seen a machine, it's called peg deck or butterfly. Yeah, so you will sit, you still can hear me, yeah? So what happens is you will sit on a machine and the peg deck is this. You've seen that? Yeah, and sometimes the peg deck machines, when you sit down, the peg deck, your exercise would be here, but the handles, the arms are actually behind you. So what you need to do is basically you're going beyond your range of motion. So you're starting in a pre-stretch position like that. And from here until you actually can start here, that is the sticking point. It's really, really difficult to do that, particularly when you have issues and you're not very flexible in your shoulder. Yeah. Some peg deck machines, what they have a little pedal. You're using your feet. You push that pedal down, and then the arms then will come forward, and you can actually put your hands inside, your arms inside. You release the pedal, and you can just do your exercises. But not many machines have, or not all machines have that. Again, it's always depending on the machine, but that is what it means. It starts in a pre-position, okay? Exercise selection is limited for some clients, again, as mentioned before. Then large weight jumps, that is also what I just mentioned, yeah? So normally it's like 5 kilos, 10 kilos. Some of them, they have like additional pins, which you can add on, or a magnet which you can add on as like maybe 100 grams or 200 grams. Hi, Sonia. And they are not cheap to maintain. I tell you that if you have to bring every 3 months a serviceman to maintain a machine, and depends on what machines you have, it's going to be costly. So this one is additional information in case if you think of opening maybe your own gym once you have your certification. Okay. So, and now we talk about different kinds of machines, what we have. But that one is not exam questions, and we just go very quickly over it. And I don't really want to waste too much time with this. Okay. So you do have variable resistance machines, and you have accommodating machines. So the variable resistance machines, you do that most of the time they are like pin loaded machines. Okay. And the accommodating resistance is either done with the resistance, is not with like physically, like with cables. They're using pressure. So it's pneumatic. I need to practice this to pronounce, very difficult to say. Okay. And you also have hydraulic, and you also actually have electric. So that one is also another one. And you have also other machines, as I mentioned before, where they're doing like isokinetic exercises, which are super, super expensive. So basically you can go through this one by yourself. So, I mean, we can just go through this one, but it's not really, it's really only very important when you go into the gym where you're not familiar with the exercise. So this one would be a normal variable resistance machine, the traditional one, what I have. I don't have money, that's why I have this one. So you just remove the pin and you put it there. So it's like a cable, it's weight, it's just normal. Okay, so the other ones is done with pressure. Okay, and they are extremely good. They are very, very good, but they are also very, very expensive. Okay. They are very time efficient as well, because again, you press just a button. This one, when you want to change the resistance, you don't have to change the pin. You just kind of like press the button and it will change the resistance, but it needs a compressor in order to build the pressure. Okay. Hydraulic, similar to the the pressure one. It's excellent also for rehab. Yeah. It's good for muscle overload. But I mean, muscle overload you can also do with variable resistance. So I'm not too sure why this one is an advantage of hydraulic. I'm not too sure about that. So there's no eccentric contraction. So basically what it does, that is actually quite cool. So normally when you do, let's say, a bench press, okay? Or no, let's say you're doing a seated leg extension, okay? That's actually pretty cool. So when you do a seated leg extension, you have your quadriceps. You're doing extension, you do and flexion, extension and a flexion. And when you have, when you do have the this one, okay. Hang on, push pull. Okay, so when you have this one, what they do is you need to basically contract your opposite muscle in order to bring it back. So it's a push and a pull, push and a pull. So you have basically, there's no eccentric muscle contraction because you do have a concentric on your agonist, and then straight away you're doing an concentric on your opposite side. It's actually a good one. That's why it's so good for rehab. But I'm telling you, this one is very, very expensive equipment. And again, requires high maintenance. But if you want to know more, you can just kind of like, you know, go to YouTube and Google the difference. It's not exam, it's in your book, because again, as mentioned, if you want to, you know, think of open a gym, that you know what is the difference, okay? So let's go to the potential dangerous exercises, or when they are ineffective. And what I'm going to show you, and that is also, it's not so nice in your book. In your book, it's only black and white, but it's exactly the same what I'm showing you now. The first one, what we need to do is, in order to make sure that the exercise is safe, the first one, what is the purpose of the exercise? Okay, very important. Okay, can you choose an exercise which is maybe more effective, less dangerous? Yeah, so you really need to consider what is the purpose of the exercise? Is it the best for your client? Again, that is what I just said. Is it effective enough? Okay, but we talk about effectiveness later also. What is the difference between effectiveness and specificity and all the things? Okay, check out if there's any risk. So maybe if your client had a problem with the, you know, shoulder, is there any more risk to put more pressure on the shoulder? Do you need to change the lever, for example? And is there any safer alternative? And again, this is ensure that the exercises selected have always the most effective outcome and the lowest risk ratio. Okay, I cannot point this out more enough. I see there are so many exercises, so many exercises. And it might seem a little bit boring when you always do the same, but if you want to really be on the safe side, you can add on, you need to add on some different exercises once in a while, because we will talk about it why. But please don't follow certain fancy exercises you just saw on Instagram, and just because this guy has like 2 million followers, okay, and is super good looking, okay? So that's not, sometimes they're doing nonsense exercises, completely nonsense. And the muscles where they say, oh, this is so good for your abs. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? That one has nothing to do with your abs, idiot. Go to make your certification before you do a YouTube video or whatever. So anyway, there is a lot of things. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of nonsense there. So be careful, okay? So let's go. Potential dangerous exercises can place significant stress to the following areas, okay? And that one is in your book. So it's the little one in your book. Mine is like nice and blue, and yours is just black and white, okay? But it should be the same. All right, so the location most likely will be back, neck, knee, and shoulder, okay? So this one is the most common location of your body where you might get injuries, okay? So for example, when you do straight leg sit-ups or double leg rises, again, the same thing what we mentioned before, forward flexion without support, or you're doing kind of like a back bend hyperextension, all those exercises, if someone does have a problem with the back, can do it worse, okay? I'm not saying you shouldn't do a straight leg sit-up or double leg rises. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that is the most common part where there's the most stress on the joints, okay? Because when you're doing Pilates, we do have straight leg sit-ups, no problem. We do double leg raises because the legs are involved a lot, but we know how to engage the core. That's a different thing, okay? So when you're doing neck hyperextension, a 90-degree head circumduction, loaded neck flexion. So when you're doing kind of like this, uncontrolled, you can injure yourself quite a lot. So be careful with that. If you have someone, particular, you see that often when they're doing their shoulder and when you're working their traps, that they're warming up with this. And that is a good exercise when you do it control and when you know how to do it, okay? So in your knee hyperflexion, deep knee bends and stuff like that, or when you're locking out your knees, that is not a good idea. And in your shoulder, the most common one is impinged shoulder. Yeah, so suddenly you feel like, ouch, it's like needles. But we talk about the injuries also in detail. So what it exactly is, okay? So, but this one is the most common area where you do have injuries, okay? And then you do have the most dangerous exercises or most potential exercises or where it happens. So when you do squats, obviously, when you do the wrong technique, military press is the overhead press, okay? Because that one is often the cause of shoulder impingement. And we will have a close-up look. We will also talk about, upright rows and stuff like that, because I'm not a big fan of it. I'm never saying something's wrong. I'm just saying, be careful, okay? Or if someone does shoulder flies. Yeah, so when someone is doing the lying down and you're doing the chest flies, because the arm placement plays a huge role. Yeah, that's why it's important. Please, please, please make sure that you don't miss the practical part. Yeah, because it's important that you know that. Okay. So now in your book, you do have something called the deep knee bends. Yeah, so that is the one we just talked about, the knee deep bend. And I show you how it looks like, because I'm not too sure what it is. So check out the video, please. So it's quite typical in yoga as well. So they go forward, then he goes forward, he tilting. Can you see this is a hyperflexion in the kneecap? He shows it again on the other side. Goes down here. Okay, now he overloads, he goes forward, and you see there's quite a lot of knee hyperflexion. So this one can basically cause problems in the knees. However, I'm not saying it's wrong. When you go to a yoga class and they do a purpose, again, what is the purpose of the exercise? The first one was establish the purpose of the exercise. If you are joining a yoga class, go for it. When you know how to do it, go for it. None of the exercises, what I show you, I'm saying it's wrong. Okay, but if you are not a yoga teacher and you see someone is doing this one all the time and they come up with you because they have problems with their knee, you may do the modification, just go for half squats, okay? This is just an example, okay? Then the same here, the hurdler stretch. The hurdler stretch, the purpose of this exercise is to stretch your inner thigh here, your quadricep here, and your hamstring here, okay? But and also to stretch your glutes, yeah, so which is your butt muscle. Remember, we talked about that. Okay, why is this one? Hang on, just I want to do this. I want to change this one. Hang on. Hang on, I just need to hide you a little bit. Okay. Okay. So its purpose is you want to stretch your quadricep, you want to stretch your glutes and your hamstrings, okay? But when you do that, you also have here an hyperflexion. Can you see that? So if you are a professional hurdler and you want to prepare specific for your sports, obviously this is perfect for you, okay? But if you have a client who has tight hamstrings, there are different alternatives in order to stretch hamstrings and quadriceps, okay? Because this one is designed for hurdlers, okay? These are athletes, okay? Again, sport specific. What is the purpose of the exercise, okay? So on the other side is a modification, what you can do, okay? So for example, you can do a standing, holding on a quadricep stretch. Or if you want to do it kneeling position, push your hip forward, you have a beautiful stretch for your hip flexors if you want to have that, okay? So it's not really, it's always, you always have an option, okay? So same here. This one is a double inverted hurdler stretch. This one is a yoga position and she looks like pretty chilled here, yeah? And there's nothing wrong with it because the purpose of the exercise is, I don't know exactly what is the philosophy behind certain yoga poses, because, yoga is not only the physical exercise, they always combine it together with the mind and body, and they have like a philosophy behind every movement you do. And that's perfect. Okay. And she is fine and she's good. And she will go out here without a pain because she is trained to do it. She has a reason why she does that. But would you put your client who just had a knee replacement in this position? No, of course not, right? But if you want to stretch them, there are different alternatives to do this, okay? That's why I'm not saying it's wrong. So be very careful. You not want to judge someone, particularly if someone is doing that maybe with a different trainer for a long time, and they come to you and actually they have a lot of pain. So you try to be professional, try not to say, oh, how can she do this? You should know that's not good for your knee and blah, blah, blah. So you just say, oh, wow, that's cool that you tried that. I would not have dared that because I'm not a yoga teacher, but all right, so maybe we can try something else. So just prop them up here. You see, this is an example. This is not in your book because it's not really kind of like an exam question what you need to know for your theory. But when you go out and teach people, that you know what this chapter is about, okay? So this one is primarily used to stretch the front of your thighs, okay? Because what it does is when you're doing a stretch, I show you here for the quadricep. So usually when you do a quadricep stretch, it's this way, right? So you're bending the same leg and you hold it here, okay? So this is the traditional one. But when you go and, for example, change your hand, I don't know exactly if you can see that very, very clear, and you will put your leg a bit further backward. I'll show you from the side. I bring from here, I bring my leg a bit further back. And then I show you again this side. What I do is I will push the leg towards here. What I have, remember, we talk about the quadricep. The quadricep has 4 muscles, remember? We talked about it, quattro. The muscle has 4 heads. Quadriceps is 4 muscles. When you're doing this exercise, your leg is slightly in a different position. It's not here. You can see it's slightly more to the outside. And with this position, when you are turning your legs a bit further to the lateral side or to the internal side, you can actually stretch all 4 heads of the muscle. It is a very good exercise, okay? I'm not saying it's wrong, but again, it's not for your average Joe. And I'm telling you, athletes will not come to you to train with you unless you are really, you know, advanced and or you want to, you know, go into sport specific training for some athletes. But normally the auntie from next door who just wants to get rid of some pounds, these guys, they will come to you, okay? And these guys, they are not ready to do this, okay? So now the next one is the back hyperextension. This again, this is a cobra. This is again, what is the purpose of the exercise? He's doing very well. So he wants to stretch his abdomen. He wants to have a good stretch and relax. So this is a cobra pose. He wants to stretch his arms, shoulder, okay? He knows what he's doing, all right? However, it is still an hyper back extension. Can you see that? So in order, if you want to have a good stretch, just try to do something else, okay? So maybe what they can do is they can lie down on the back and just start with a little hyper extension. And once they have that, you can prop them up maybe on a bosu. You know what a bosu is? Bosu is like this half ball with a platform, or you can lie them down on a big fit ball. So at least when they're doing the hyperextension, it is supported. Yeah, so they don't do it like that. But this is perfect. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, because when you do a yoga class, this is a part of your sun salute, okay? So there's nothing wrong with it. Same here. If someone is comfortable with a straight standing leg toe touch to have a good stretch for the hamstring and also have a good stretch for the back, go for it, no problem. Yeah, but remember we talked about the stress, what this one can put on the tensor force in your disc. Yeah, remember we talked about it when you see where's your force, where is the stress of your disc. So if someone could do this one maybe a year earlier, but maybe now it's painful for them, you know, then just take an alternative. Do this, no problem. Let them stand a little bit wider so that it's not so painful for them for the hamstrings. And then you can do this, and you do have a beautiful stretch for your back as well. So there's nothing wrong with it, okay? So the loaded spinal twist. Okay, so now that's going to be very interesting, in particular when we're talking about or when we're doing exercises like this in the gym. Okay, what is the purpose of the exercise? For example, if the purpose of the exercise is to work the obliques, for example, okay, and he does it in a controlled movement, it's a good exercise in order to get a very good oblique workout, okay? Or if someone is sport specific and he wants to improve, you know, the kind of like rotation movement, maybe he is a hockey player or whatever. So if that one is, because this bar is heavy, this one I think he's using a 15 or 20 kilo bar, okay? And he's strong and he does it in a way that, you know, he knows what he's doing, then it's okay. Now, they say here in the picture, the modification, try not to load it too much and do a seated, slow spinal rotation. If the purpose of the exercise is to train the obliques, then that one is not the best. Because when you see, yesterday we learned about the obliques, how they are working, right? They're going this way and this way. And when you load is here, so the force is here, but you are doing this rotation, there's no force, you know what I mean? So you can do it, but it's not really effective, okay? You see a lot of people doing this, yeah? So if you want to do a good oblique rotation with resistance, then you better do it with a cable. You better do it with a cable, or you better do it with a machine where you have resistance here. But you understand what I mean? When you have resistance here, it's not going to affect the contraction phase. There's no, the muscles, they're pulling for you to go that way, but the resistance goes down. So it's, you know, when you do this and you're doing a squat, then it makes sense to have the load here, because you're doing a squat, you have additional weight in order to perform the exercise. But when you have here additional load and you do a twist, there's no additional weight, so it's not really effective. Yeah, okay. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, okay. And now here, gravity inversion. This is quite, it's a traditional technique used by physios, by chiros and stuff like that. So basically what it is supposed to do, it's kind of like releasing the compression, or it releases kind of like the, if there is nerve impingement or stuff like that. So a lot of people swear doing it. Particular for the average Joe, when you let them hang like that, and maybe your person has a has high blood pressure, that one I would not recommend. If someone has glaucoma, that means if they have problems, if they have a lot of pressure with their eyes, and also when they have kind of like, you know, a spinal instability, so you don't want to do that, not really. I mean, the thing is, again, if you are a practitioner and you know what you're doing, go for it, okay? If some client wants to do a home gym and wants to buy this by Lazada and ask you for your opinion, or put this thing in the door frame, I think he's very brave to do this. I think this is not a door. This is a door frame, I guess, right? And he kind of like, it's like that. I used it one time, and I have to say I'm maybe a bit biased. I felt better afterwards, but I don't think there are different alternatives in order to release pain in the back. Okay, so I would not be keen to buy an equipment like this for my gym. Okay, so but again, people will ask you for your opinion. So I want you to be very professional and want to just say, you know, oh, you know what, I'm not used to working with this equipment, then you stay away from it. Okay, so that is also kind of being professional, admitting that maybe this one is beyond your work scope. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, maybe you want to go for you know, physio to do this, so we want to focus more on different exercises or stuff like that. So I'm not a, I don't know, I wouldn't buy this equipment for my gym. Okay, but this is me. Yeah, so but it is in your book, and you need to know what it is. Any questions? No? Okay, so let's move on. Now this one is the fun part. All right, so again, this one is in your book. Hang on, this one here, strength training. Okay, so we're talking about the benefits of resistance training. We talk about different body types, and also we will talk a little bit about different characteristics of clients, so that you know roughly what to expect, and you know what you want to program for them. Okay, so which exercise will be best for your clients? So this is not in your book, because we don't have the license to print it, but this one should be in your book. This guy is not in your book. I like him actually, but this one should be in your book. Can you find it? Is it in your book? Okay, so selling strength training to your client, again, particular when it comes to weight training and women, I'm telling you, it's very difficult to convince them. They are so scared that they're bulk up. Okay, oh no, I don't want to become, you know, like Hulk or Arnold Schwarzenegger. You need to explain to them, in order to look like that, it's hard work. it's work of years and years and years and years. And when you are bulking up, when you look like Hulk, usually they're taking crazy supplements. I'm not saying that they're going for the steroids, but there is no way that you can bulk up in a way when you are not purposely increasing your protein intake, when you're not purposely doing something that you look like a man, particularly for women, okay? So, and there's always, it's not that you go to the gym and the next day you wake up and then suddenly you have a bicep like that, okay? I mean, no, all right? Last time somebody was so sweet, she came to me and then she said, she didn't want to say it. She said to me, yeah, I want to have, you know, I want to be defined but, you know, I don't want to look like, and then she had a look at me and I said to her, yeah, you don't want to look like me, right? And she says, yeah, I didn't want to say it, but actually you have a little bit too much for my taste. And I say, yeah, that's okay. It's fine. I mean, I didn't choose, this is my job. Okay. Sorry. But you know, it's not, but okay. And also in addition, often when you want to be lean, you need to also be low in body fat. Okay. So the definition comes out when you have less body fat. Okay. So there are so many things, so many different factors playing a role when it comes to bulking up. Okay. So in case you're training your client for a year, roughly you need about 6 months until you know, usually about 4 weeks, they will feel difference, but you don't see a big difference. Okay. So where you notice a big difference is usually about constant training, about 3 months and above. Okay. And that is kind of like if you're really strict to your diet and really strict to your exercise regime. So looking good is hard work. All right. So, and if you think, okay, I guess you know, because if you see your client every time, sometimes you don't realize, oh, actually it is a bit big. You know, it's like if you see someone who gains weight, you don't really realize it. You only see someone maybe for 2 years, you don't see them, you see them again and suddenly they gain maybe 10 kilos, you will see them. But if you see someone every single day, you know, you don't really realize it. Okay. So you can always do a reverse training. That's no problem. Okay. You can always say, okay, you know what? I think this is just nice. We stay here now, we maintain it. Okay. So you need to know that. Okay. So now the benefits of strength training, I mean, of course, muscular strength and endurance is increased, maintain of muscle mass. When you have more muscle is more metabolically active. So in order to a muscle to survive, it will burn calories, okay? Otherwise, it will not be able to survive. It will increase bone strength and density, which is good for people with osteoporosis. It helps in your postural balance, enhances sports performance. It decreases the injury risk and is good for rehabilitation. I think this is pretty straightforward. So if something like this comes in a in the test, I'm pretty sure you know this, even if you would not have paid money for the course, I'm sure you know that. Okay. However, we have different body types and it depends on how you are born. You have difficulties to gain weight and you also might have difficulties to lose the weight. Okay. And it is pretty obvious. Actually, you can see that. Usually you can see that which body type someone is. For women like us, I hate girls who are ectomorph. I hate them. These are the people who give birth and they just give birth and then they're wearing the skinny jeans again like 2 days afterwards. You just want to kill them. Okay. So I don't like these people. Okay. Just joking. Okay. So these people, they can eat a lot, but it's very difficult for them to gain weight. But if someone is a guy, particularly here in Asia, when you have this typical skinny, Chinese, slender, type of people, it's so hard for them to build a single gram of muscles and maintain. It's almost impossible to do that only with weight training. You need to stuff their face. They need to eat and eat and eat, and they have to eat a lot of protein in order to gain and also keep that little extra muscle what they actually have, because you don't want to stuff themselves. Some bodybuilders, they do that. They eat a lot. So they're doing completely binge eating. They're eating 5,000 calories. So they look like that first. And then what they're doing, they're going for shredding. It's a very common technique, in the gym environment, but it is not good for your health. Okay. Because it's not only that you're gaining fat with like superficial, the fat goes also in your inner organs. So I'm not advising to do that. It's very common. Adam, how many people do you know who do that technique I just told you or talked about? Let's see if Adam is still there or if he's having coffee or sleeping. Hello.
Hi, sorry, I didn't hear you. It was the volume was a bit low. Sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
Come on, admit it. You didn't. You were in the kitchen and had some coffee. Okay. I was we talking about the skinny guys who wants to gain weight.
Yep.
Usually what they do is a very common technique in terms of muscle build is that they go and stuff their face, eating 5,000 calories no matter what, and they are getting fat, and afterwards they're shredding, which is not really the best way to do that, but it's very common in a gym environment. How many clients do you have who does that or do that? Because you're working in a gym, right?
I worked in a gym before, so
okay.
yeah, I saw them. Yeah.
Can you share your experience? A lot, right?
No, most of them, just the guys especially, they come in asking to they undergo hypertrophy training.
Yes.
So they expect results fast and all this. So they do get disappointed.
Yeah.
But I always try to remind them it takes time. It's not going to be
okay.
unless,
So
okay. Unless but they're like
okay, because then you educated your client very well, because I know a lot of guys, particular guys, they're doing the overcompensation. They eat a lot, they're gaining a lot of weight, and then they go for shredding. Okay, because that is they're doing like
that's the basic. Yeah,
that's the basic, and it's just not healthy for the heart and for the liver and all the things. So however, ectomorphs, these are the guys who are really, they have very difficulties to keep their single gram of muscle on. It's very, very, very difficult. I have one teenage guy, he is 15, and we managed now within about 8 months, he gained 12 kilos on muscle mass, and he nearly vomits every time he needs to eat something, because we really give him protein shakes. He needs to drink it because he says, I'm full, I can't anymore, I don't want. But we say, you have no choice but to do it. So if you want to really, go for competition and you want to do it, you want to gain weight, you want to be comfortable, you need to do it. So ectomorph, it is just the way they are built. You can't change. This is your bone structure. This is your genetics. You can't change that. Okay. And there's another one, which are mesomorph. There are from nature. They're just, my husband is someone like that. And I mean, sometimes I really could kill him, because, we go on holiday and I eat the same thing what he does, and we don't exercise, and I come back and I have like 2 kilos all on my butt, or 3 kilos, depends on where I go. When I go to Germany and eat a lot of sausages, can be 3 kilo and more. So, and we come home to Malaysia and my husband is going to start working out. He's just starting. He just do a few sessions and he's back to normal. Okay, straight away. For me, I need about 6 weeks until I actually get rid of this 2 kilos. Particularly now I'm menopause, so it's even worse. Yeah, so it's just unfair. I think in general, men have so much advantages. So
there are more things
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's not talk about just going to the toilet when you are in a car, right? They just go in the toilet in the bushes. They don't care. We have to take everything off. It's so unfair, I think. And oh, never mind.
and the
Eh.
cellulitis and
Yeah, and the
and
gray hair, exactly. We get gray hair, we have to color all the things, and they look sexy when they have gray hair. It's just unfair. Anyway, we can't gossip so much because we are not only women here, it's only Adam is also here. So anyway, and I recorded this, so we can't gossip too much. We have to do this another time. Good. All right. So mesomorphs are genetically in a predisposition that actually they have more an athletic, they tend to be more athletic. Okay. And if they gain weight, they will kind of like lose it straight away again and go back to the athletic one. Okay. So when they're starting an exercise program, there will the time that you can see something is much faster. Okay. And then for this poor guys, these guys very often they have a metabolic disorder. Okay. But sometimes, okay, if someone is an endomorph, that means they don't necessarily need to be fat. Okay. Endomorphs are some people who have a large, they're just big. They are just kind of like tall and big. Okay. It doesn't necessarily, I have a lot of trainers from, let's say, from Holland or from Australia, because the Australians, they are taller and Dutch people are tall as well. And they look as if they are bulky, but actually when you measure their body fat, they are not very bulky. So an endomorph doesn't necessarily need to be fat, but they tend to gain weight faster and they have difficulties also to get rid of that. Okay. The endomorph is a structure and a genetic predisposition what you have. So you cannot change genetically how you are born, but you can change how you look. Okay. And remember, we talked yesterday about the muscle fibers. So with training, you can actually change how you look. So you would not become an ectomorph, will never become or will never be a mesomorph by like naturally. Okay. But when an ectomorph starts proper training and proper nutrition, they can change the look that they look like a mesomorph. But the moment they stop training, they will lose it every time, and the other way around as well. Okay, does it make sense? And usually these guys have like, like very often the tall, skinny, like the models, they have like, they're very slender, they have very long limbs. These are ectomorphs. Okay. And I would say for me, I think I am in between here. So I look like a mesomorph, but I have to work hard to stay away. So when you look at me now, I'm more lean and you see the muscle definition. But when I'm not careful, and now particularly when I'm getting older, I have to watch. And I think genetically, my family is more on the endomorph side. Yeah. So, okay. You also, yeah. Okay.
For me, the same. I always have to take care on what kind of food. I mean,
yeah.
of course, if I have cheating days, okay. But
well, yeah. But cheat days, you don't gain, you will not look like this if you have a wedding on a weekend. That's why I'm always kind of like, if someone said, oh, I know I gained 3 kilos, I had a wedding to attend. And I'm like, our body is physically not able to store 3 kilos of body fat in one binge session. Okay. So unfortunately, it is good that way, but unfortunately also it takes the other way around. You're not able to lose unless you go for plastic surgery and you're removing the fat. You can't lose 3 kilos of body fat in one day. You can't, it's no way. Okay. Our body needs a minimum of 3 days to adapt to changes. Okay. But we talk about nutrition another day. Okay. Is this clear? Can we move on? I have another video also. Yeah. Okay.
There are 3 types of people in the world: ectomorphs, endomorphs, and mesomorphs. When you find out which one you are, you can adjust your workout to it and build the body of your dreams. The 3 types were proposed by Dr. William Sheldon, an American psychologist in the 1940s. First, there's ectomorphs. People with this body type are slim, usually tall, and with longer limbs. They are those lucky guys who can eat whatever they want and never get love handles or too much of a body. On the flip side, ectomorphs also have difficulty gaining muscle mass. So however hard they work out, they stay lean and can never bulk up even if they want to. Then there are endomorphs. These are the exact opposite of the previous type: short, stocky, and with a tendency to gain weight from every single crumb eaten after lunch. These guys struggle to slim down, and their prominent gut and wide hips stand in the way of their athletic success. On the bright side, the endomorphs are naturally more powerful than ectomorphs, and they make excellent bodybuilders or weightlifters. And finally, the lucky mesomorphs. They normally have wide shoulders, a narrow waist, relatively thin joints, and round muscle bellies. They boast a perfect balance of muscle and fat, along with a natural ability to change their body to their liking, and fast. It doesn't mean they can get away with eating forever, doing nothing, or are healthier than the other 2 types. It just means they can bounce back into shape, gaining muscle and burning fat easier when things get out of control.
Okay, I think that's a good video, nice explained. All right, so we're gonna go for the next one, knowing your clients' needs and goals. So when you meet your client, so the first client, the first thing, of course, what you need to do is you need to sit down and talk to him, okay? And usually you will see already how they look like when you come in, and then you know already roughly the body type. So the thing is, you need to find out what is the goals and what is the needs, because there is a difference between needs and goals and what they want anyway. I mean, that is the thing you need to explain to them, okay? So the needs usually refer to the long-term outcome, yeah? So lose weight, improve fitness in order to reach your goal, okay? And then you do set your goal, and you do have short-term and long-term goals, okay? So I would always use a SMART principle, and it is also in your book, but it is not here in this chapter. It is later in the motivation strategy. Yeah, it's a SMART chapter, is a SMART principle, which stands for, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time. Okay, but we will talk about it in the other module. Okay, and number one, when you do this, also you don't want to be too over enthusiastic in order to tell them, okay, they might need to lose 20 kilos. Okay, and again, that is a need, that is a long-term thing what they have to do. But then in order to reach there, you go and split this up, okay? So let's start. In 4 weeks, we try to be maybe a kilo down in your body fat, okay? Is it achievable? Definitely. Is it realistic? Yes, it is, okay? When you tell them 5 kilos in 4 weeks, unless you will put them on a fat diet, which is absolutely not to recommend, you can do it, but it will bounce back faster than you see, and it doesn't reflect good on you as a trainer. I had one client, they asked me to do a favor. She wanted to attend a wedding for her cousin, and she's a bridesmaid, and she needed to go 1 size down. And she wanted to lose, I don't know, I think it was 12 kilos or something like that, what we calculated in an extremely short amount of time. Maybe we had about 6 weeks or something. And I said, look, I'm a personal trainer. I'm not a magician, okay? If you are abusing your body for the last 20 years, not paying attention what you stuff it, You can't expect me to, you know, you pay me 200 ringgit per hour, and then just because you pay me, the work is done, okay? However, because I'm a nutritionist as well, so I have 4 diplomas in nutrition, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And I have also clients who are professional fitness models, and when they have a deadline where they have to be on a certain percentage on a certain deadline, we can do that. But they know what they're doing, they know it's not healthy, and I let them sign a waiver that if they have a yo-yo effect, that it doesn't reflect bad on me. Because can you imagine, I also kicked out once a client. She was really overweight, and I helped her because she was depressed, and I helped her to lose that weight. She went on holiday, she gained back everything and even more within the shortest period. I think she went to Canada she's half Canadian, half South African. So she did 4 weeks there, 4 weeks there. I don't know what the heck is she doing. I mean, I saw the Facebook pages and I saw that she was out partying and drinking pina colada and all the shit. But I saw her, I was shocked. I think I managed to lose with her maybe about 15 kilos, and I was so happy, and we worked very hard for this. We worked about maybe 8 months, 10 months, nearly a year, okay, which was slow and nice, and I was so proud of her. She looked amazing. I think she gained about 8 or 9 kilo back in this 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It's disgusting. And the thing is that I told her that I wasn't pleased, because the problem is when she lost that weight, she tagged me, oh, you know, thank you so much, Simone, blah, 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 and all the compliments, thank you so much. But 6 weeks later, she looked like a whale, okay? And of course, it reflects bad on me. What kind of personal trainer am I? You know, that this one, I will not sign up with Simone because I don't want to do that. I don't want to lose weight and afterwards I look even worse than before. No. So I gave her a warning. I told her, look, I will do this again. I give you a chance. I take you back in. We did the same thing again. And she wrote down a food diary. That is what we do as personal trainer. We monitor their food. And she didn't lose weight. And I doubted myself. I doubted that my program doesn't work. I was very concerned that she has maybe a metabolic disorder. So I wanted to send her to a doctor, you know, because I was sincerely concerned that something is wrong with her, until I caught her with her friend in a pancake house, ordering that pancakes with cherries and whipping cream. Okay. And I was pissed off and I kicked her out. I gave her her money back and I said, leave me alone. Do not contact me anymore. I'm sorry, I can't do this, because she lied to me. Okay. And I was really concerned. I was sincerely concerned about her health. And she misused my trust. And I say, no, sorry, I'm not going to waste my time with this. She takes me for granted. She's, you know, she doesn't want to be better. So then go and stuff your face with pancakes. It's fine, but don't come back and cry on my shoulders. Okay. So sometimes, I mean, because I can do this because I've known her for so long and I know that she can do it, but you know, she can't bullshit me. Okay. I was really pissed off. That was a few years ago, but anyway, she's moved back now to South Africa and she unfriended me on Facebook, but I don't have friends anyway. It doesn't matter. I'm a personal trainer and I don't drink and I don't smoke. So I have and I'm a vegetarian, so I don't have friends. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Helping a client to realistically achieve their needs and goals can be affected by, number one, initial level of fitness. You need to make sure that you do fitness tests, and we do the fitness tests together. Level of health, you have to ask them for a pre-screen exercise history and also what body type they are, genetic makeup. Okay. And then this is just kind of like key points you can refer to when you have your client. Okay. So again, first, what does the client want to exercise? Is it for toning, strength, lose weight, develop power, blah, 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 blah? Because I think Adam, most likely, he also get more men. maybe they want to build up, get, doing power lifts, doing strength training. Often male trainers get different clients than females. Okay. What else can you give them as additional, maybe write them a small program, what they can do at home with some resistance bands, stuff like that. Also, what should the program focus on? Okay. So, and we're going to talk about the principle of training after that, okay? Because there's written down here, remember the specificity of training principles, okay? We will talk about this later. So in the previous book, they switched it and they didn't switch the slides. That's why it's in here now, okay? And then there are any, injuries or any medical considerations. And here, this is the same table as in your book. So this one could look like a client, what clients are for general strength, what clients are for endurance and strength endurance and muscle endurance, and also for if someone wants to do power and increase strength, fat-free muscle mass. So basically, if a client comes in and say, I want to have usually this one is for general strength. If your client says usually it's for this, and if this one is this one is that client, okay? And this is just kind of like in general what you can that roughly how to do that. But we will go again step by step with this when it comes to programming, okay? Oh, okay, next slide. This is the SMART principle, what I already taught you. So so specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, on time, okay? So just make sure that they cannot say just, I need to lose weight. Be very specific, okay? I wanna lose, I don't know, 6 pounds and 1 inch from my waist. That's very specific because some people want to lose weight on their ass and not on their waist, or I want to lose here. Yeah, so be very specific. Can you measure it? Yes, you can measure it because you can pinch it when you do your fat caliper testing. You can measure it with your circumferences when you measure your with the band. Is it attainable? Is it realistic? Is it timely? Okay, so this is actually a very, very, very good, very powerful. Let them sign. Let them do it. So what I did is I think this is not in your book, but this is something which I always give to my client. And what they do is they actually print it out and put it on their fridge. Okay, so just write it down. It's just psychologically, it helps. Okay. So
sorry, Simone.
yes.
I thought it's not possible to target which area of fat you want to lose. Like just now,
Yes.
the example you gave, you said that if they want to lose like one inch, let's say one inch of fat from that butt or something like that.
Okay. So the thing is that yes and no, you can't do spot reduction. If someone, yes, you're right. I said initially you can't go and do, let's say 5,000 let's say crunches if someone wants to lose weight on their belly, right?
Yeah.
That is what I said. But if the goal is for your client, okay, my client wants to lose weight, particular in the waist area, or if someone says, I have too chunky legs, I want to focus more on legs, you definitely can target that specific area, okay? I'm just saying there's no way if somebody wants to have a nice butt, you cannot do this with only programming, let them do squats the whole day, okay? You need to do you have to have the full picture, you have to have the full body, number one, in order to have your body balance, the muscle balance. Number two is you need to make sure that your overall fat is going to get less. But if the target is, if your client says, I don't like my thighs, So if your target is, I don't like my thighs and I don't like my belly, you can get rid of the belly, but you can't get rid of the belly just doing specific exercise only for your belly. That is what I mean. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. All right.
Is it clarified?
Yeah, it's clarified. It's all
Okay.
good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anyone else have questions? No.
Taiwan, yeah,
Angel, you have
it's
questions?
yeah. Just want to share what happened to me before I'm 70 kilo, yeah.
I
And
can't
then,
hear you. It's really bad. I can't hear you. It's very bad. Can you try to say
hello,
again? Yeah,
can you
better.
hear me?
Now it's better. Okay.
You hear me now? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to share. I just want to ask before I'm 72 kilo, like last COVID 2019, then I start my workout and I lose weight drastically. And the thing is, I stick on 61 kilo and I tried to do many things. I still like, oh my God, because I'm even thinking I want to lose weight like 50, 56 or 58, something like that. And when I went to Philippines, I stayed there for 6 months. I didn't work out, and I reached the 58 kg, but I lose muscle mass. Like I feel like my butt become smaller, my thighs are like become smaller. That's why somebody told me that I lose a lot of muscle mass, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's possible. Yes,
So
that you lose muscle and you gain fat.
is
Yes.
true. And
Yes.
then yeah, and I reached the 58 kg, but I still have a floppy belly. Is it because I lose weight drastically? That's why my belly is still like I can't make it to be firm. It's
Okay,
always
so
like this.
number one, there is a difference between skin and is it fat or is it skin? Okay. Number one.
Yeah, fat
You
and skin is still
yeah. So you do have a point. If you do drastic weight loss, what you do is you do have loose skin, okay? But the thing is that, and that is also if someone really, really loses very fast weight, okay? The same way if someone gains a lot of weight, they get stretch marks, okay? And you can also get stretch marks when you're losing a lot of weight, yeah? So number one is it skin or is it fat? That's the difference, okay? Number two is you can exercise as much as you want. You're from the Philippines.
yeah, I'm from Philippines.
And their nutrition food is not 100% to what me as a certified nutritionist is in line, okay? Because they like to eat, spaghetti with ketchup sauce and stuff like that, a lot of pork, and hardly any vegetables and fiber. And they like to drink sodas as well and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure once you start monitoring what you put in your mouth, it will come off. It's
Okay,
your
so
food.
now I now gain weight again into 61, but I got a big thighs now. But the problem now is because I'm 61 again, my belly is a little bit like chunky, like it's a little bit big. So this is the thing, like I don't know how I don't know how
When
to
we
do it.
so when we go next week into our measurements, oops, sorry, my camera is off, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know exactly what it is. I fix it in our break, just a second, okay? So the thing is, because after that we have a 5 minutes break before we go into the exercise programming, okay? So we have now done 1.5 hours. We do again until 9 o'clock. I think that's good. We go through about the difference between losing fat, losing muscles, okay? And what is the difference? The thing is that I actually don't really care about the kilos as much as I care about the percentage of body fat, okay? Because there is a difference, okay? But I don't want to go into details too much because I don't want to take too much time from this topic covering it now, because we have very limited time to go through the topics here. And if it is okay, we will talk about it anyway. Number one, we will talk about when we're talking about nutrition programming for fat loss. Okay. And we will talk again about it when we're doing our fitness testing, because we are learning how to take the body fat percentage, and also the difference between visceral fat, which is the internal fat, and the difference between our superficial fat. Okay. So can we keep this one? If we have more time, maybe on the last day on Sunday, we can go into more details, but I really want to cover the first things first. And then because we go into this one anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So
Okay,
let's have,
Anne.
okay, 5 minutes break, please. And then we continue with your general principle of exercise programming. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Okay, let me see if my camera works now. Ayo, still not working. Ay, ay, ay. What is wrong with my webcam today? It doesn't like me. Okay, now. Ah, okay. I'm here. Okay, good. All right, so please go to your general principle of exercise programming. So we will talk about the basic principles of training, including the FIT principles. You need to understand the exercise programming and consideration, and then also we will talk about the different classifications. We will talk about the general adaptation syndromes, which is the GAS syndrome, and also what is DOMS, okay? How to overcome strength plateaus, and also the guidelines to design programs for hypertrophy, strength, and power. However, in your book is only very, very, very limited information, and I'm having slides prepared for you, and you can screenshot them. You can always go back to your video. The problem is when we go into the details when it comes to programming and when we're doing case studies together, we can't print out everything in a book. If we will include everything in the book is going to be like that, okay? And the book is already big enough as it is, I'm sure. Okay, so let's start. So the principles, what you have in your book, okay, there you go. Principles of training. So you do have the first one is the principle of specificity. The second one is effectiveness. The third one is progression. I think this is the order in your book as well. Let me know if I'm wrong. Then it's overload, balance, variation, reversibility, and then there's the FIT principle. Okay. Is it the correct order? Yeah, Jasmina, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm in the kitchen. I prepare for my boys here the dinner, but I have the laptop with me, but I have to take in the book.
Okay, never mind. It's okay. Do your thing. Do your dinner for your boys, but I think it should be the same order. Okay. So let's very quickly go through and what it is. So the principle of specificity. So means it's what the name says already. Yeah. So it is sport specific. Okay.
I think it's not in orderly manner, but it's okay, I guess, because I think on the book it's principle of training first.
Yeah,
And-
that principle of training is the headline.
Okay, then you got the principle of effectiveness.
Okay, and then
Overload.
yeah.
Then specificity.
Okay, yeah.
It's fine. Just you asked, right?
Oh,
So-
okay. No, I'm just going to need to change the slides. Then it's
All
okay
right.
because, as I said, I did some amendments in the book, but they didn't give me the slides, so I need to do this by myself. Okay. Specificity. It's as the name says. If you are in the school and you are having an math exam ahead of you, you will prepare yourself, you will train, what is 2 + 2 = 4, right? Because it's math, right? And you're not going to go and study for history, for example. And that is the same basically for your sports. If someone comes to you and wants to say, okay, I want to improve my tennis or my golf swing, you need to, program them according to the outcome, okay? So there's no point to give them exercises, what you usually would program someone who wants to become a good soccer player, okay? So when you want to do plyometrics or whatever, okay? So specific, it needs to be specific for the needs and the goals of your client, okay? So that makes sense, yes? I think. Does it make sense? So it needs to be specific to the muscle you need to have in that specific sports, okay? Then basically the effectiveness is that, for example, if someone has a tight hamstring, for example, okay, and you want to do a stretch for your hamstring, it is more effective to do a hamstring stretch when you straighten your knee rather than doing it with a bent knee. Okay, that is an example. So try to do the exercises as effective as there are. Okay. Another example is certain exercises. Let's say if someone wants to build upper body strength. Okay. So maybe it would be more effective to let them do a resistance training for chest. Okay, for example, you let them do a bench press rather than let them do a close grip or let's say or not a close grip, a normal grip push-up. Okay, it might be more effective for a person to do a bench press in order to build the chest muscle than doing a push-up, because, example, performing a push-up requires a lot of technique, and you need to be able to do a proper technique to perform the exercise in a way that it has the same effect as if you would do a bench press. Okay, that's the example. Hang on, I need to open the door for my dog. He's knocking on the door. Just a second. Yes, mister? Go in. Okay, sit there. Okay. Because he was knocking on the door and he didn't stop, so he is kind of like a bit funny. Okay, so now, okay, does it make sense? Okay. Then principle of progression. The principle of progression and overload is actually going hand in hand, and there is just a small difference that you need to make sure that when you progress, you need to overload in order that you can progress an exercise. Okay, so that's why I'm saying usually, or also you can sometimes read it, an progressive overload. Yeah, so you may have heard of that. Okay, progressive overload means that you need to go in order to get the most effect out of the exercise. You need to make sure you see how they're actually going hand in hand. Yeah. So to get the most effect out of the exercise, you need to do a progressive overload. Okay. It means, for example, when you are reaching a certain milestone and there is no more progression, you need to work beyond a certain workload what your client is accustomed to. Okay, that one is what it means. So you need to slowly start a progression, and a progression could be not only that you are changing to heavier weight. For example, you could do, for example, use the same weight, but you could do it harder, for example, when you are changing the tempo of the exercise. Okay, so let's say you're doing a normal tempo like 1-2 and 1-2. Okay, so, and for example, you go to a person's house and they only have limited weights. Okay, so you need to play with the puppies what you have. Okay, so you need to make sure that you get the most effect out of this exercise and you still have a progression. You can overload it when you, with the same weight, for example, you just changing the tempo. Let's say you're starting, you're going super duper slow, and then you're going super, super slow down. So you can progress, you can overcome a strength plateau or when you're stuck with just changing the tempo. Or you can start in a negative repetition. You can start in your concentric phase and then you just concentrate on your eccentric muscle contraction. For example, you go quick up And then you're starting and you're concentrating on your eccentric phase. That is one overload technique what you could use in order to get, again, progression with the same weight, okay? Or you can change the lever, for example. Remember, we talked about long levers and short levers, yeah? And I would suggest you change, or let's say, for example, a progression could be you starting with your knees on the floor when somebody does a push-up, and then you let them ask to do the push-up on the toes. And if that one is not good enough anymore, you can actually elevate the legs and do it like decline. So you could do that, for example. So it's not necessarily always that you are increasing the weight, okay? So there are different overload techniques, which we talk about soon, what you can apply in order to get this training effect, okay? Then the principle of balance. So we talked about it a few times already. So just make sure that you're not only focused on one muscle group. Make sure that you are training in a week all muscles in your body, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean in one session, okay? If someone trains a few times a week, you can split it. You can do a split routine. You can do, okay, you focus only on one muscle group, and then the day after, you focus on the other side. It's no problem, as long as it is done and covered in the whole week. And that one, of course, works only if you have a very committed client. Yeah, I have one client. I will never do a split routine. I will never do lower body, upper body, one day lower body, one day upper body, because most of the time she starts canceling. Yeah. So, and if I know the characteristic of my client that she will be canceling a minimum once, okay, I go for this client full body every time, because I never know when I see her again. Do you understand that? That's why, because clients are completely different. Okay, so you really need to make sure that according to your client's lifestyle, that you are including all muscle groups. So you do not want to prioritize one muscle group over the other. And Adam, I want to point out, this one is not kind of like saying you can do, let's say, if somebody wants to lose, let's say, more on their belly, okay? For example, you can do maybe 3 exercises or 4 exercises a week for the belly, and you do only 2 exercises for the back, okay? As long as you balance it out. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't pay more attention, but you can't neglect one muscle group. So you always need to balance it out. When you train the front, you need to work the back. When you take bicep, you need to work the tricep. When you do your quadricep, you need to work your hamstrings. Okay, that it means with balance. Okay,
Right.
it doesn't. Yeah.
Yep, understand.
Okay, so it doesn't mean also balance, not as instability. Okay, so balance, muscle balance. Okay, so principle of variation is also very important. Vary your exercise. So what you can do is, you do not want to give, when you're writing a program, okay, and the best thing is, initially, of course, it depends on the clients. Some clients, they really don't like changes. They really want to do every time the same thing. Number one, it's a bit hard to get then a progression. Yes, you can do that. You can just kind of like linear always increase your weight. It will bring you somewhere, but it would be better to change, instead of doing always a squat, yeah, and just increasing the weight, that you just, do some lunges once in a while, or do a leg press. So vary. It's not only for the sake of your own sanity, because it's going to be very boring. It is also for your neuromuscular adaptation as well, because you will not have the same effect if you keep doing always and always and always and always the same thing again. You will be stuck. okay? So, and if you have a plateau, you need to change. You need to change the exercise, but you don't need to change the exercise every single time. What you can do is you can actually change the sequence of the exercise, but we talk about this one later, okay? So then the principle of reversibility is, number one, I talked to you about it already before. When somebody is thinking that, oh, you know, it's actually a little bit too much, I want to kind of like cut it down a little bit, you can do that reverse. So instead of doing increasing the weight, what you're doing is you are decreasing the weight and go for a little bit more repetition, okay? So that way you will change and you will target different muscle fibers in your body, and that one will actually also avoid that you're getting flabby, yeah? So, and also what it means is if someone is, okay, so for example, if my son is in a soccer school, okay, he is in a professional soccer school in Thailand, and they have a periodization system. So what they're doing is they're having the whole year scheduled according to their games, okay? So, and they are doing a macro time schedule, so for the whole year. Then they have sections in mesocycles, and that one is usually about 6 weeks, maybe to 3 months. And then they have microcycles, okay? So they have smaller units again. In my son's case, they have the micro cycle. For him, it would be 2 training units a day, okay? So he trains in the morning and in the evening, okay? But that one will not apply normally for our clients, okay? So what they do is when the end of the season is there, so after the season is done, what they're doing is they will do a program for them so that they will not lose completely during the holiday their strength and their gains what they had, okay? That one is the principle of reversibility. So it's very, very important. So first, you will minimum maintain the ones what you have so that you do not basically start from zero, okay? So this is basically the reversibility. Unfortunately, if someone has an accident, let's say if someone is really, you know, going into the gym every single day, very strict, and suddenly they cannot work out anymore, they will lose muscle mass and they will gain a bit fat. That's normal, okay? For those guys, is unfortunate. They will lose quite a bit, and then you have to start again all over. But if someone goes on holiday, and I know when we're on holiday, it's always different. We always have to good attention. Oh yeah, I'm having a hotel with a gym. I say, okay, cool, we can do a Zoom session. And suddenly there's, you know, silence. They will never ever do this. Maybe they go to the treadmill, but they're not going on a treadmill for the sake of, you know, oh, I need to make Simone happy. They're just going to treadmill in order to burn off the extra, you know, food what they're actually binged on the day before. So, but that is, we are human, right? I mean, that's the thing. Okay, but this is basically what it means. Then the FIT principle stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. And that is basically how we are going to program each of the training programs, no matter whether it is an cardiovascular or if it is a strength training program. And this one is kind of like an example. And take a screenshot because this is not in your book, okay? So I'm just giving you this one as an example. For the FIT principle could look like for an aerobic workout, a flexibility, endurance, strength, and body composition. So if someone wants to go for bodybuilding, okay? For example, or losing fat, okay? So this one could be an example of how it could look like, right? Please take a picture or again, go back to your video when I'm sharing it tomorrow with you and then go through with this one. So this is an example how it could look like, okay? There is no right thing or, you know, a bad thing. But the thing is that what we say is frequency is how often you work out. So usually we say it should be minimum 3 training sessions per week. And I think this one is also in your book. Check out in your book, is it written down? Minimum training sessions per week, or workout every other day. Yeah. The intensity, it depends again on your goal. Okay. So when you're doing an aerobic training, it refers to your Kavonen formula. That is your, let's say if this one is 60 to 90% of maximum heart rate is an example. Okay. So if someone doesn't want to go into anaerobic, so maybe this one could look like, 55 to, 75% of the maximum heart rate. But you will not understand this now because we didn't talk about the intensity Kavonen formula yet. Okay. Then the timing. We say usually a minimum of 20 minutes. So 3 times a week, 20 minutes is the minimum. Okay. Ideal would be about 30 to 40 minutes. But if there is an exam question, so that would be a minimum of 20 minutes is the one what you need to recommend. Okay. And then the type of exercise as well. So what is your target? Okay. Does it make sense? Okay. So each training session, and no matter whether it's flexibility or whether it is strength training or whatever, needs to have warming up and steady state, kind of like your workout, let's say, and your closing activities. Yeah. So the first one, the warm up, is called preliminary activities, which is the warm up, and then your basic, let's say your training unit. Yeah. So your training unit, and then you do your cool down and maybe also your stretching. So this one is basically how you need to structure. And again, remember, physical activity is different from exercise. Yeah. So if someone comes to your gym and says, oh, I don't need to do the warm up, I just, run like a crazy chicken. I had to, fetch the children, and then I had to go to the supermarket and then to the tailor and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, good for you. That's additional, extra calories burned, but this is not a warm up because you need to specifically warm up according to the exercise which comes. All right. So the warm up phase could look like, well, first, why do we warm up? And what is important to remember, and I'm going to also tell you, and the reason why this one is in red, last time in the exam, there was a question saying, stretching before the exercise, does it improve flexibility? And all of my students said yes, and it's not right. If someone does really have tight hamstrings, you need, or hamstrings or whatever, if they are just kind of like very stiff, okay? Just your little stretching before your exercise doesn't improve your flexibility. What it does is actually it will, let's say, decrease the amount of risk what you may have. Okay, it lengthens a little bit, but the moment you start your exercising and you're contracting again your muscle is back to normal shape. Okay, so warm up, when you do warm up and you're doing, usually in your warm up you do not do a half an hour stretching in between the warm up, right? So when you include warm up, your stretching, usually the stretches, what you do in a warm-up is to prepare you for the exercise and to avoid injuries, okay? It does not improve flexibility. Yeah, so if you go for a run, I see a lot of people doing that, right? They go for a run, they're doing their, they're doing their mobilization, maybe they do this, whatever, right? And then what they do is they do this, pre-stretch a little bit, pre-stretch, they're doing a little bit of calf. Do you really think that this one will improve your flexibility? No, it doesn't improve flexibility. This is just to prepare you for your exercise so that your ligaments are warm and your tendons are warm and your muscle is warm, okay? It does not improve flexibility, okay? So please, if one of you will answer this one in your exam, I'm gonna shoot you, okay? All right. Right, so again, reason for warming up. Okay, we talked about this one or not. It delivers delivery of oxygen to the working muscle, increases through the increased blood flow, speed of muscle contraction increases when you're warm. It improves the neural efficiency, and it increases the physiological and also the psychological preparedness, okay? So both of them, you're physical and psychologically prepared for the exercise which comes, okay? So this is the reason for warming up. And it could look like what you can do. So the first one is it increases your body temperature. You can do mobility exercises, or you can do sport-specific exercises, yeah? So let's say if you play tennis, for example, what do you use for tennis? You're using your shoulders, right? A lot. So it could be sport specific. So when you do your swing, so what you do is starting with your shoulders, doing a slow, starting with a small range of motion. And then what you do this. And then maybe what you're doing is you slowly do this movement. You're doing some rotation movement. And then maybe you're starting slowly with a light, like swing a little bit and, doing some hits before you actually go for a serve, right? So this is sport specific, okay? So when you do soccer, you play you're doing a different warm up and so on and so on, okay? For example, in your weight training or in your circuit training, for example, you could use the first stations as the first warm up. So that is what I like to do. For example, when I have a group exercise and I do a circuit training with them, I'm using the first round, number one, to get them used to the exercise, that they know what to do, because usually circuit training is, I need to time stop, right? So because I introduce the exercise, they can do one round and use it as a warm up. But of course, I will ask them to do it just with their body weight. Okay, so I do not ask them to do it with, any resistance yet. Okay, so strength training, for example, you could use the first set when you're doing let's say a bench press. You have, I don't know, 100 kilo actually on the program or 60 kilo you want to lift. So maybe you do 20 kilo first for warm up a little bit to get used to the exercise before you go for your sets. Circuit training, I just said, so maybe you can just kind of like do the first 5 stations. I always do the full round. And when you teach kind of like an aerobic class, like a dance class, usually they're involving the whole muscle group, so the full body. So usually you try to get the full range of motion. So because, when they're doing all this, yay things, so that all the muscles are warmed up. And then the cool down is important, that you do that because it helps the body to slowly return back to the resting state. It makes sure that when you have the build up of lactic acid, that it dissipates the build of anaerobic waste in that will be your lactic acid, yeah. Also, it's good for muscle relaxation and time for flexibility. So usually when you have enough time to do cool down, I want someone to get a bit more flexible, then maybe I incorporate another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, focusing only on that muscle group where he needs to do the, where they are a bit more stiff, okay? So the flexibility development, improvements in flexibility can be achieved more easily when the muscles are warm. Yeah, so usually you try not to do that straight away. So even though if your client comes only for 1 hour flexibility stretching, like when we're going through the partner stretches, which we go through. So some people come to you and they only want to do 1 hour stretching, okay, because that is what they need before they actually can do anything else, okay. You still need to do kind of like a warm up with them, yeah. So even though it's just like stretching, you need to do it, okay. Yeah, and the cool down is therefore a very good idea to do the stretching. That is what I just said before. Okay, good. Now let's considerations for programming. Okay, this is the same as in your book. So when you program someone, they get sore, not only sore during the exercise. So I think yesterday, Camille, he was referring to the burn, yeah. So we talked about the lactic acid. Okay, so DOMS is not related to lactic acid. Lactic acid is during the exercise, okay? So when you exercise and you create more lactic acid, then your body can, let's say, get rid of it, then you need to stop exercising. So that is basically where you feel the burn, where you say, you know, this is something, you know, this is the one kind of like, that's the burn, okay? The DOMS, when you feel a day after or even 2 days after, that one refers to small micro tears. They're tiny, tiny, tiny tear. It's actually an injury. What happens? Your muscle becomes, they get tears, okay? And that is when they are healed, that is when hypertrophy happens or when they become stronger, okay? So when you start exercising, what you do is you are interrupting your homeostasis. That means homeostasis is the state of the body, how it is. So you start exercising, you're asking your body to do something which it's not accustomed to. So that means what happens is you have a stimulation, and what happens is your body will react. And that is, the DOMS is the consequence of that. That's why it's so important that you have a rest in between the training units, unless you're doing a split routine. Yeah. So when you're doing upper body, let's say one day upper body and the next day, you still can go in the gym, but you don't want to work the same muscle group again on the same, on the following day. Okay. So if you are programming your client to do a full body workout, you need to have a minimum of 24 hours in between for recovery. The heavier the weight it is, the more intense it is, you need to give them even more recovery, okay? So that one are the DOMS, that stands for delayed onset muscle soreness, okay?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a question. Means the DOMS is the consequence from the anaerobic moment?
Exercise. Not only the anaerobic, it is the anaerobic means the accumulation of lactic acid. So basically what happens is, even if you are, the DOMS are more, the more lactic acid you have in your blood. The higher the intensity, the more sore you are.
Yeah, but for me, it's at the moment, a direct, I think about the anaerobic situation, because the lactic acid that more produce, it's in the anaerobic moment or not?
Okay, so the anaerobic energy system is not, or not the other way around. The lactic acid doesn't only accumulate when you're doing your cardiovascular anaerobic system, okay? It's also there when you, let's say, for example, when you lift very, very heavy weight. Let's say this is really heavy, okay? Your heart rate is not necessarily very, very high. Okay, so that means you might still be in your aerobic heart rate zone, but you still have a lactic acid accumulation in your blood because of the muscle stimulation. Okay, so the lactic acid happens with weight training, and it also happens when you're doing anaerobic, HIIT training, for example, or sprints. Okay, so both of them, of course, need energy, but you can when you do this one, let's say if you're doing light weights, but you're doing, let's say 50, 100 reps of this, your heart rate might be still okay, but your muscle will start complaining, right? So you do have an accumulation of lactate happening here, even though you are in your aerobic zone. You understand what I mean? You still have a byproduct.
Yeah, I have the German word. Ist das dann Muskelübersäuerung?
It's the Milchsäure, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then
Yeah.
it's clear.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is this one clear? Yeah, okay. So that's why I just said the recovery time between the workouts must be adequate enough to allow the muscle to recover. Yeah, so that is what I just said. There is written down here at least 48 hours is required for full recovery. Okay, so again, the heavier or the more intense you work, the longer you need to recover. Okay, so if some power lifters, when they train for competition, they sometimes need to do one training session and they need 3-4 days before they actually can do the second training session because they're lifting very, very, very heavy. Okay. The third consideration when you are doing your program is that you really make sure that you teach your client from the very beginning how to breathe. Usually we say when you are doing the effort, so in the concentric phase, so when you're doing the effort, you exhale. And so when you lift something, when you're doing the effort, then you exhale. And when you do the eccentric phase, the relaxation phase, you exhale. Okay. So really try to emphasize this because it really happens often that people don't pay too much attention and they have a different habit in terms of breathing. I often see that with people who come from a yoga class because yoga is a different breathing technique than Pilates, yeah, for example, and again, a different breathing technique when you lift weights. And to get this out of their mind, it's very difficult to do, yeah, so just pay attention to this, okay? So this one is the breathing. All right, so then the exercise selection. So you can use either single joint lifts, they're also called isolated lifts, okay? So as the name says, it's only one joint involved, okay? So, and there are advantages and disadvantages to, compound lifts and single joints lifts, yeah? For example, when you only have one single joint involved and only one muscle group involved, the good thing is you can only concentrate and of recruiting these muscle groups, okay? And when you do that, when you are tired, you can be sure that the fatigueness comes really only from that muscle and not from any other muscle groups which are tired before you actually finish your exercise. Yeah, so that one is that is a good thing. So if you want to do single joint exercises, you can concentrate and you can isolate only one muscle or only one muscle group if you want to do that. Yeah, so for example, when you do a single, I go back again to my single leg extension. When you do a single leg extension, for your quadricep, single joint, only your knee does an extension, okay? So when you are tired, let's say after 15, 20 reps or whatever reps you are, you can be for sure it's because it's your quadriceps is tired, okay? So you've done your job. When you do, for example, when you work your quadricep in a squat, okay, it is possible that your quadricep is actually still okay, but maybe you just worked your glutes before, okay? So let's say you did your glutes before, and maybe you did some core workout, okay? So, and then maybe your quadriceps is actually okay. They could do more, but you would need to stop this exercise before you're actually really tired, because of the supplementary of the helper muscle, because your core is tired, maybe because you have your shoulders is pain because you just did something else. Yeah, so that is a different thing. So that one is when you do single joint lifts, you can concentrate only on one muscle groups, and you can be sure that you can actually fatigue only this muscle group. When you do double joint lifts or multi-joint lifts, it is possible that your muscle is actually your target muscle would be actually able to do a bit more, but the helper muscles are tired from a previous exercise. Okay, so also the other thing is, what you have to think is, double joint exercises, double joint lifts, they have the advantage on the other side. They have an advantage. You can lift because you do have more joints involved. If you have more joints, you have more muscles, you can actually lift much, much heavier. So in terms of progression, or let's say if you want to, lift stronger, of course, double joint lifts or multi-joint lifts are more effective than single joint lifts. Yeah, so the more help you have, the heavier you can lift, right? So everything has disadvantages and advantages. So there's nothing wrong with doing one over the other. It is, number one, it depends on the preference. Number B, it depends on the availability of your machines. Yeah, so if you don't have any machines for isolation exercise, it's difficult to do, right? Yeah, and then multi-joint lifts, it's also compound exercises, but they are actually very, very advanced. Yeah, so what they're doing is there is more for sports competition preparations, because what they do is they require more muscle involvement, because it's like the full body. And they do a coordination. For example, here, when you do power cleans, power pulls, split jerks, power snatches, and all these things, these are all power lifts, movements, okay? So these are multi-joints lift, because it's not only, let's say, double joint lift, for example, would be a leg press. Okay, when you do a leg press, you have your hip involved, and you have your knee involved. It's only two joints. Okay, so when you do a split jerk, then what you do is you're starting first with a bar, right? You're starting first with a bar. You go up. You're starting from here, going into an upright row. You bring it over your head, and then you go into a split. So it's a very, very compound exercise, very, very advanced lifting exercise. So this is a multi-joint lift exercise, okay? So again, unless you are going to specialize in some athletes, usually when you are writing a program, it will be this two. Okay?
Simon, can I ask something?
I didn't hear. Somebody asked. Belinda?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Belinda. Okay.
Yes.
Back to the single joint lift. Just
Yeah.
now you said, if you want to go for knee extension, so
Yeah.
our muscle that when we know that the knee or the knee will be pain because of one muscle. That's muscle only. But when talk about doing a squatting, it's a muscle group. So lower body muscle, is it considered single joint lifts or compound exercise?
The squat,
Squat, because squat involve a quadricep. And
yeah,
then so we have also gastro and also gluteus, isn't it? So that's a muscle group. It's a
yes,
muscle group.
but it's two joints. It's a,
Yes, it's like two joints. So
Yeah.
is it compound exercise?
yes, it is a compound exercise. You have
Okay. So
because you have your hip joint,
Mhm.
you have your knee joint, right?
Okay.
When you do a squat. When you're doing a single joint lift, when you're doing a knee extension, it's only one knee involved to do the extension. When you do a squat, you're doing an extension in your hip and an extension in your knees. So it's two joint involved.
So the double joint doesn't mean that it's a different muscle group. It can be the same muscle group. In attachment of the group lah. Meaning,
No, not really. The thing is that when you do, for example, when you do a leg extension like this, you only have your quadriceps, right?
Yes.
So when you do a squat, you have your quadriceps, you have your glutes, and you have
Yes.
your hamstrings.
Uh-huh.
You have a little bit you have your stabilizers like, a gastrocnemius, because that one stabilizes the knee and stuff like that. All these muscle groups are involved when you do, for example, a squat. That is a double joint lift, a compound exercise.
So if I do like it's like lunge together with the arm, so both is different muscle. Is one upper body and one lower body. Still we call it compound exercising.
That one I would even say multi-joint lift.
Multi joints.
Yeah,
I see.
that one. So when you're doing a group exercise and you would say you're doing some lunges and you do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one would be a multi-joint exercise. Yeah, but
I
obviously, but that one is not an athletic multi-joint lift. Yeah, so it's also a compound exercise, but obviously
In multi joint lift.
yeah,
I see.
yeah,
Okay,
because
I understand.
because you're not only using your knees and your hips, you're also using your biceps.
Yeah, bicep. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Or when you do this, when you do, let's say, a squat and an overhead press. I just have to take this out. Yeah. So let's say you do this and you do this. Yeah. So from here, when you go from here and then you go up and you do an overhead press, that one would be also an
Multi-joint lift.
a multi-joint lift, because you're
okay.
using your hip, your knee, your shoulder, your elbow.
Okay. All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right,
Yes.
no problem. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Right. So exercise sequence. So sequencing. So when choosing how to sequence your exercise, you have to consider the big picture of the training session. Okay. Number one, in order to have the most effect out of the exercise, remember, we always want to make sure this one is the most effect. It will make sense that you are going to work the large muscle groups first before you do the small muscle groups, okay? Because you don't want to pre-exhaust the synergists or the helper muscle before you actually go into your main muscle groups. Does it make sense? Yeah. So for example, if I'm going to go, okay, I want to train chest today. Okay. So I would do, let's say, a chest press, for example. And if I want to do additional, I can do a tricep pull down. Okay. But I would not start first with a tricep pull down. And then I would go into the chest press, because when I do this first, it's a small muscle group. I'm doing an elbow extension. So I'm working my tricep here already. Okay. And then I go into the chest press and then I need this tricep. I need this one to be fit in order to help me to do this movement, okay? So the same thing, that is what I mean. If you are pre-exhausting your tricep already before you're actually doing your main muscle group, okay, you may need to stop, not because your chest muscle cannot take it anymore, but because your tricep is tired. Does it make sense? Wakey, wakey, wake up.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, good. Right. So the principle is based on the fact that the exercises for larger muscle groups are more demanding and easier to perform early in a training session. In a typical personal training session, however, also the same thing here. I see a lot of people, what they do is they put, I see that in gyms, in the public gyms, where the personal trainers are not very well trained, so they are not FISAF trainers. So the thing is, I see so often you go into a commercial gym, the first thing what you see is the treadmills, they're always full. They're always full. There's always people on the treadmill. What they do is they go first 20 minutes, half an hour on a treadmill, right? Because cardiovascular training burns calories, that is what they think, and it's boring like hell, and let's just get over and done with it. And they're using a half an hour treadmill as a warm-up for their training session, which is insane, okay? And there are even personal trainers asking, you know, clients to go on a treadmill 10 minutes, half an hour, or 15 minutes before their session. This is crazy, okay? If they want to do a warm-up on a treadmill, yes, there's nothing wrong with it, but take it easy. Do it 5 minutes and not so intense, because you don't want to pre-exhaust your muscles, or, you know, or they go on a spin bike, you know, so it's pretty hardcore. And then afterwards, they wonder why they can't perform anymore in their weight training session, okay? So if they want to do cardio, when you want to integrate cardio, do it after the weight training session. Number one, your glucose is ready to be used and you can perform 100%, okay? When you are going to get rid already of all your stored glucose during your cycling and your warming up, you don't have the energy provided anymore for your training session, okay? So it just swap it, just change the sequence, okay? So let them do that after the weight training session, okay? Okay, so some clients will not have the lower body endurance to proceed. Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I just said. So some people don't, if you let them do, you know, walking on a treadmill or, you know, too much, too long, they will not be able to perform as good as if they would do it afterwards, okay? Then remember your options for sequencing. Okay, large to small muscle groups, compound to single lifts, opposing muscle groups, lower body to upper body, or the other way around, okay? Then the exercise speed, as I mentioned before, usually it is, let's say, 1-2 seconds up, 1-2 seconds down. You can use the speed, the tempo, in order when you want to progress or when you want to overload. When you go for super duper slow up and super slow down, or when you go up and then you go super slow down again. So that one makes a big difference. So you can play around with a tempo, but usually we do concentric about 1-2 seconds, and then eccentric 3-4 seconds is so 1-2 and then 1-2. So it's not like that. Okay. So not super speedy, okay? And then the breathing again, exhale when you lift and inhale when you go down. Right, so the training age or frequency and progression. So as your client gets better, you need to progress, right? And in your book is the same here. the training age means not the age your client is when he starts training with you. That means the training age means how long has he been working out, okay? So usually beginner is about, 6 months, and usually they're trained 2 to 3 times per week. And then you can change the training program 6 to 12 weeks. But again, that's totally up to the client and totally up to you. So I have clients, their need to have changes every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. It's hard for them. It's a little bit challenging, or for me, it's challenging to convince them that there's no point to change it now because they're not ready yet, but they get very bored, okay? So what I'm doing is I stay with the same exercises, okay? But what I do is instead of doing, let's say, every Monday, I do, okay, first exercise is lunge, second exercise is chest press, third exercise is lat pull, and so on and so on. I will change it. The first day 1, I do a sequence, let's say 5 exercises, okay? Exercise A, B, C, D, E, okay? Then the second time when I see them, what I do is I don't start again with A, B, C, D. Maybe I start with exercise E, then I do exercise C. So I just swap a little bit the, I vary a little bit the exercise sequence, okay? So, but usually they should be happy to be normally, 3 to 12 weeks is actually kind of like for a beginner, usually it's like that. So meaning the program, it doesn't mean that you need to stick with the same weight all the time. So maybe you can increase the weights in between. It depends how well they adapt, okay? So then here, this one is about 6 to 1 year. And that one is advanced, is considered 1 year. But it doesn't mean 1 year membership. It means basically 1 year attending, 3 to 5 times a week your course, okay? That means advanced, not if someone is a paying member, all right? Some exercises, for example, a deadlift, even if I have people who are with me maybe 2 years already, until today, they're not able to do a proper deadlift because a deadlift is a very, very demanding and very advanced lifting technique. So some exercises, there might still be in their even beginner or intermediate phase, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean just because somebody is with you for, 2 years that they are in all exercises advanced, okay? You need to be careful with this. Certain exercises are really, really complicated, okay? Some people can't do it. Some people, they just don't have the body awareness, okay? You need to be careful. Does it make sense? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the other one. Also, we talked about the DOMS, and this one is now the GAS. So general adaptation syndrome is the neuromuscular system that will adapt to a specific load. This one is already what I mentioned before. So when you put stress to your muscle, okay, it interrupts or disrupts the homeostasis, okay? And then you need the recovery and repair, and that is where your muscle will grow, okay? So, and there is always an individual time span. Some people need longer and some people don't need so long when it comes to recovery, because they will respond different to stress. And stress in that sense is your exercises, okay? So if the stress becomes too large or too great, the individual will experience a negative response and be less likely to adopt to the exercise program, okay? So that means if you go too much in the beginning, if you overload too much, if you get too much weight, all right? And if you train them Monday and on Sunday, they are still sore. So obviously that one is not a good idea. You need to make adjustments, okay? You need to take the weight a little bit less, take it easy a bit, okay? But the stimulus need to be there that they feel something. No point to let them train with 100 grams, okay? So you need to have a certain stimulus. Otherwise, it's no point. Waste of time, waste of money, okay? It's recommended that the variation in the exercise programming through the intensity and volume of the exercise is essential to minimize the possibility of overtraining, okay? So again, if you are doing too much again, that means if it still hurts, actually you better wait another day until you do the same muscle group again, all right? It's very, very important. Many people don't have progression because they're trained too often, they're overloading too much. And the problem is the risk of injury is very, very high when you do overtraining, okay? So be very careful with this. But how to determine the starting weight? We will go through this as well. So because you may think like, well, but how do I know what is the correct, weight? Yes, there is a technique you can do, but again, it's always an error and a trial and an error. It's normal because maybe someday he feels, wow, I am very good shape, just maybe Sunday morning he comes for training. He's really in a good shape and then he can perform very well. So what you do is you write down the load, and then when he comes 2-3 days later and you do the same exercise, but maybe he comes in the evening, 6 o'clock in the evening or 7 o'clock in the evening, he's tired because he had a shitty day and maybe he didn't sleep well. And, you give him this weight, what you actually wrote down, and he might not be able to perform as well. So you do not want to insist that he goes and say, hey, why? Because Sunday we did this one. So this one is written down and now you must do this. No, you don't do that. Okay. So don't overtrain. So if he feels, oh, I think I need to slow it down, just take it back. Let him do less weight, more repetitions, no harm. Okay. So another consideration, you need to have strength plateaus. Okay. So initially, what happens is you will adapt, you will feel sore, blah, 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 blah. And after a while, you do the same exercise. You're not sore anymore. You're fine the next day. You can go for it. Okay. So, but then that means also nothing happens anymore. So basically what you do is if you would maintain the same exercise and the same load, you will just maintain. You will not go further and you will not lose weight. You will not gain muscle. You will not lose muscle. Okay. So you will just basically maintain. So what you do is then you do have some strategies, what you can do in order to help that. Okay. Again, you can do either if someone, let's say, trains, let's say 6 times a week, okay, and you're so used to this exercise, what I would suggest, do the training frequency. So change it instead of doing every single day, okay. Let's say when you split the body, let's say Monday you do this body part, Tuesday you do this, Wednesday to do this. Some people want to go to the gym every single day because they don't want to see the family at home, okay? Sometimes it's like that, right? So what you have to do is maybe you change it. What you do is instead of doing a split routine and see him every single day, you do, okay, you know what? I see you day number 1, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And what we do is we do lower body, upper body, and then we do a full body workout, for example. Okay. So what you can do is you will decrease the training frequency. Okay. Because a lot of people think, but why would I decrease the training frequency if I have a strength plateau? Don't I need to actually go give him even more exercise and more often to go so that he gets more? No, you don't want to do that because you need this recovery. Maybe he doesn't have enough recovery in between. Maybe he got used to this. The body knows, okay, Monday is leg day, Tuesday is chest day, Wednesday, your body knows it. And then when you change that sequence, when you change the frequency, cut it down, and then rather than doing only one muscle group, maybe for 20 minutes, you do 1 hour full body, your body will change. The response will be different again, and you have again a progression. Okay. You can change the exercises, obviously, so you need to change that. Then you change the number of sets. So maybe what you do is increase the sets. You change the resistance repetition relationship. Yeah, so maybe you want to do a pyramid system. Maybe what you do is you're going for, you're doing the first set with very heavy weight and less repetition. And then you drop the weight and do more repetition. So you're doing a reverse pyramid or pyramid style. So if a person doesn't work enough, maybe they come only twice a week, maybe you squeeze in one more training session, or you need to do the training intenser. So you need to increase the intensity of the training if nothing happens anymore. And you know how to do this. You can do it again, change the tempo, for example, doing more static isometric exercises. That one would help. Yeah. Use assisted training. That means you spotting them. So give them so heavy, more heavy weight that they usually couldn't do alone. Okay. So maybe what you do is let them do a forced repetition. That means the last rep, actually they are tired. No, they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. No. And I say, hey, come on, I help you. So you're just going to spot them a little bit to do one more. Okay. That can help. Implement negative training means when you're starting in a concentric phase and you are focusing on the eccentric muscle contraction, that one is a good one. Actually, negative training is one of the, when you do negative training or that one, then you will have even more DOMs. So actually that one is the relationship with DOMs and negative training is actually higher for some reason than when you just do the normal concentric eccentric one. Again, or you just slow the movement speed. So the 5R principle, make sure that you take full range of motion, no cheating, okay? Make sure that you do have enough resistance, that the full range of motion is, you can do it without losing your form or technique. If the resistance is too much and you really need to kind of like move your body, and that is not the cheating technique. Remember we talked in the beginning about cheating technique, which is used by powerlifters, which is okay. I'm talking about using momentum in order to perform the weight. If that one happens, you know, the weight is a little bit too heavy, take it a little bit less. So make sure that the form and technique is correct. So make sure that your repetitions are according to what you want to achieve. Okay. So strength, hypertrophy, endurance, and also that you do have rest in between the sets. Okay, not in between your training units, in between the sets. So the more intense, the heavier you go. Sometimes you need to go up to powerlifters when they do one set. Sometimes they need 5 minutes, 10 minutes in between until they can actually do again another set. Okay, so if they're going for very, very, very heavy weight and low repetitions, so when they do strength training, let's say they're going up to 1 maximum rep, they need a lot of recovery in between. Okay, so, and we just had recovery here as well. This is important, and I cannot tell you that enough. I mean, if you start training your client, most likely you may have only 1 or 2, and you might be able to still remember what exercises you do. But once you start getting more and more clients, please write every single thing down. Number 1, it's better for you. It shows your client that you actually care and you are prepared when you see them. Okay. And also when you go and work in an environment, maybe if you are sick one day and then your colleague needs to take over your client, that they have the record and they can see, oh, okay, his name is this, that is the goal, that is what Jasmina wrote down. Okay, I can read it. Okay, fine. All right. This is the way you do. All right. And there's no, you know, you can use nice forms, you can download them from the internet, you can actually write everything down. I just go and write everything down with my hand, because I always scribble notes and stuff like that. So for me, the pre-printed like sheets, for me, it's not always enough, you know, space to write. So what you need to write, obviously the name, goal, restrictions, okay? Then instructions for the client to use when they are not with a trainer. So that means when you are writing the program and you need to write down, okay, careful, just make sure that your seat isn't this and this and this, you know, thing. So because some gyms allow, or some gyms, or your trainer doesn't see you every time. They want to train by themselves so that they know what to do. Okay. Write down the exercise and the correct sequence, date of the workout session, number of the workout session. Again, specific seat positions, how much load you're using, the repetition for a specific weight. And again, maybe you can just write down, okay, don't forget to do whatever you're stretching for your hamstrings or for your big toe or whatever they need. I don't know. Okay. So this is also in your book. Then I think this is pretty straightforward. We know we have reps, we have sets, we have the load, and we have the maximum repetition. Yeah. Do we need to go through this, or is this one clear? I think this is clear. Yeah. What it means. Okay. Then again, classification of exercises. Again, isolation exercise is the same what we had before. It's a single joint exercise. This is a double joint exercises. This is basically an integrated, is a multi-joint exercise. Okay. The associations between sets, reps, rest, and intensity. Okay, so there is a relationship, a direct relationship between those. And then these variables combine to determine not only the intensity of the workout, but also the number of exercises possible in a given time frame. Okay, so changes in the variables, such as the sets, reps, and rest, and the load will determine the intensity of the training session. Okay, does it make sense, right? So, for example, what you could do is, if 3 sets of 12 reps at 35 with a 30 seconds rest in program, then perhaps changing 3 sets of less repetition, maybe only 8, but you increase the weight to 40 kilo. And then because it's heavier, you need to increase from 30 seconds to 1 minute. Could be beneficial for additional strength gains, okay? So this is just kind of like an example, okay? But we have plenty of more and we will continue tomorrow, okay? So for example, here, this one, it could look like when you only have a client who has 20 minutes time to work out. Some people can't do 1 hour, they can't do. So usually what you do is you could do only 1 to 2 sets. A good spot maybe could be, let's say, 12 to 20 reps, but it depends on, of course, what is the goal, okay? Okay, and then you have a training technique. So maybe the first set, you do just kind of like, you do 1 set until, you don't do the repetitions until 20, so, but you just go until fatigue, okay? But you need to choose a good load, yeah? So if the load is not there and they go, you know, for 150 reps each exercise, then they will not be done in 20 minutes, okay? And then you can try up to 6 exercises, okay? Or what you can do is you can just do 2 standard sets, and then you do 4 to 5 exercises possible. So, and that is the same for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and 50 minutes, okay? But the exercises itself and also how to program that, we do this all together tomorrow. So this one is in your book, but you don't have the pictures here, okay? And as I mentioned before, in your book is only this, but we go into the details tomorrow, okay? And then I give you more examples and how to actually program a program for we do hypertrophy. We will do this because usually strength and power, again, these are athletes. Normally, average Joe, they come for hypertrophy. That is guideline for lean body mass. Yeah. So when you read this one is actually lean body mass endurance. Okay. And of course, they will also get stronger, but strength means strength is strength and power is power. So when somebody says, oh, I want to lose weight and I want to become stronger, they actually want to look like that. Okay. Not that you think if somebody says, I want to work, I want to be stronger. Usually most people, they want to look, that they take care of how they look like, okay? Because that is a difference. If somebody comes and wants to work for strength, they have a goal, no matter how they physically look like, okay? They don't need to be ripped. They only have one goal. They want to have a certain strength for a certain exercise. Does it make sense? Obviously, when you do this, you develop strength to a certain point. Otherwise, you're not able to lift up weights. But strength, programming for strength is different than programming for power, and different for hypertrophy for this one. Okay, so lean body mass means hypertrophy training. Okay, so because when you have a lot of muscle, you are going to, I mean, of course, these guys also, they have muscle, but it's a different it's the physics is different. So usually this one, they don't care how they look like. This one, it's more for vanity. Okay. So this is the very general guideline. The load usually is up to 95% of the 1 RM. That means 1 repetition max. And we will calculate this together. We go through together how can we actually find this number out. So usually they do about 2 to 6 reps, sometimes even only 1 rep, depends. Okay. If they are starting from 8 to 12, and then when they're getting a bit more advanced, they will go heavier weight and they drop it to 2 to 6 reps, sometimes 5 reps only, sometimes less. So, and beginners, they do in the beginning 2 to 3 sets, and advanced, they do up to 6 sets. Lifting speed is 3, usually 3, but of course there are also different guidelines for them. So sometimes they're having also a lifting and they're pausing. We talk about this one tomorrow. And then usually what they do is they don't do isolation lifts. Yeah, so usually they're doing compound exercises. Okay, so where all the muscle groups are involved, because if you have more muscles, you can lift heavier. So you get stronger because you have more, you can lift heavier. Okay. So I actually had only one person I needed to train for power, and that was also for soccer player. I hardly have anyone to train for power because this is very, very sport specific. Okay. So the load again is quite in a high range, repetitions 4 to 8 reps, but it's also at a high velocity. Yeah. So you do have strength and you have a lot of speed with it involved. Okay. A lot of plyometric exercises for this one as well, because it will be kind of like explosive with good form. And usually they have also up to 5 minutes rest in between the sets because it's very challenging. So usually this one is anaerobic, and these guys, they are using which muscle fiber types? Muscle fiber A or no, 1 or 2? Is it slow twitch muscle fiber or is it fast twitch muscle fiber?
Yes.
Yay, very good. 10 points. Okay. All right. So loading for hypertrophy usually is about 60 to 80% of your 1 rep. And then the repetition. Well, I mean, I don't agree with 8 to 12 because everything, a sweet spot 8 to 20, you still have hypertrophy when you go up to 20 reps. Okay, so I would take it as a pinch of salt. Maybe you can do kind of like a bracket and you can do it a bit higher, but normally you just don't have enough time to always do, 20 reps or something like that. So I think that's the reason why they go more for here. But 8 to 12 is roughly the sweet spot where you still work, you have to choose the resistance in so much that you can do minimum, 12 reps, but you can do actually more. Okay. All right, so then you can do up to 5 sets per body part. We will talk about this one tomorrow again, because it depends, because when it comes to programming, the total volume of sets, what you do per week, plays a crucial role, okay? So we will talk about this one tomorrow, okay? And then the lifting speed for 4 for each rep, yes and no, it depends how, if you want to do, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. You can do very nice and slow, and you can go a bit more, but you actually can also go to going down and up. So you do have hypertrophy anyway. So I'm not too sure if this one is very super important for the first time when you want to program someone, because you always can vary. Okay, so in this one is plyometric training. This is usually not very common in the environment. So, but you would maybe need it when you have athletes that want to maybe train during off season, which is like, deep jumps, bounding, push-ups, jumps, and stuff like that. So you do an exercise and then you do an explosive movement as well. And this one you can actually write down in your book. I think this one you have in your book, but I don't think that there's anything written down in it. So this is just an example from a 6-day split training and a 4-day split training and a 6-day split training. Yeah, so it could look like Monday you do back and bicep, Tuesday chest and tricep, then Wednesday you have a rest day, Thursday you do legs, Friday you do shoulders, traps, and forearm, and then on a weekend you have a rest. Okay, so this one could look like this. It could also look like this. Yeah, so 6 days would be chest, tricep, back, bicep, legs, shoulders, then Thursday rest day, and then you start the same thing again. This is just an example. You can mix and match it as you wish. So it always depends. Some people have a lot of time. Some people do even split, 2 units. They do half. They do maybe, Monday morning and Monday evening. If you're really serious in doing some stuff, they're going sometimes for 2 training units per, per day. As for example, for my son, they're doing 2 training units because he is in a professional soccer school. So, but of course, they're not in a gym all day. So they're going on the field as well. In your book, this is now the last one for today, I think. Yeah, and then we stop. So periodization, this is actually a typical how it looks like if you have someone preparing for, let's say, a competition, okay? normally this traditional periodization system doesn't really apply, let's say, for hypertrophy. Okay, this one would be more if you go for powerlifting competition, stuff like that. Okay, so you do have a macro cycle, which is basically your whole year, and you do have, so basically this is your the yearly is basically your macro cycle, and you do have mesocycle, which would be again divided into up to 3 month sections or maybe 6 week sections. It depends on the, you know, the competition or when your client starts training and when is how much time you have. So if you have only 6 months, there's no way to, or there's no, you know, no point to do a yearly plan, because if you have only 6 months, you don't have 12 months, you know what I mean? So this is just kind of like how it looks like. So for us, when we are going to do, let's say, a microcycle or a mesocycle, let's say this one is macro. So macro would be a yearly one, which is actually, we don't need that. Usually we don't really plan for a year in terms of a client. We usually plan, let's say, up to 6 months or 3 months. No, sorry, not 6 months. Usually we do kind of like 6 weeks to 3 months. So I would say a mesocycle could be 1 whole month. And then the weekly, you can split that one again in your microcycle. So the microcycle would be week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So this one would be 1 month. And within your weeks, you have again your training sessions. Okay, so I will show you that one tomorrow. It might be a bit confusing now, but when I show this one tomorrow, it makes all sense. Okay. Right, so determine the starting weight. So let's continue with this one tomorrow. It's already late. Can we agree on a day, on a timing tomorrow? Is it possible to do daytimes? Because I really think we can concentrate more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So nobody is working tomorrow.
It will be what time? 3 to 6.
Yeah, we can do, or we can do 2 o'clock, 2 to 2 o'clock also can.
2 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. So I will announce 2 o'clock. Adam, is that okay?
Yeah, I might be a little late, but I will try maybe in around 2:30 or so I'll reach.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I recorded anyway, no problem. Sonia, is it okay for you?
I think 2 o'clock is okay, but I don't think I can join the whole session. Probably around 4 o'clock, I will need to cut off.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
No
you.
problem. No problem. Because the thing is, we record everything. So I think you do, you know, I think the recording makes a lot of sense. You can really kind of like go back and, you know, just kind of like when you have time, you can just take your book and try to make sense of everything what I try to explain. Because it's no point to do now another half an hour and squeezing more information in. I think it's just too much. So daytime is better. We are a bit more alert. In particular, now when we're going into details, when it comes to programming, you need to have all senses there. Okay. Okay. All righty. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And